Ladies and gents, welcome back to our Sam Mendes podcast on the Lights Camera Discussion Pod. So, last episode we spoke about the first few Sam Mendes films, and now we're going to finish it off by the last sort of four films in his filmography. So today we'll be speaking about Skyfall, Spectre, 1917, and then finally Empire of Light. I'm excited to speak about these ones. What about you guys?
Yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, very different from yesterday as well.
Absolutely. I think that's kind of what's good. We've spoke about this, haven't we? The fact that he's so varied in what he kind of does. So I'm sure it'll be a varied episode today as well. But enough fluff. Let's just get straight into it. So firstly, Skyfall. James Bond's loyalty to M is tested when her past comes back to haunt her. When MI6 comes under attack, 007 must track down and destroy the threat, no matter how personal the cost. So, firstly, Collie, what was your first sort of thoughts on Skyfall?
So probably, I think, out of the three of us, I'm the biggest James Bond fan. Grew up watching the series, had seen every film, I think, since World Is Not Enough in the cinema. And Casino Royale, which was two films prior to this, was Daniel Craig's first and is my favourite James Bond film. Coming into this film originally on release, I was a bit trepidatious about it because Quantum of Solace, the one before this, I didn't enjoy at all. But on watching this and through many rewatches after this is a top 3 Bond for me. Absolutely loved it. From the story to the villain to even the song, the theme song, top to bottom, absolutely love this film.
Good stuff. Todd?
Yeah, so I'm famously not a Bond person. I've seen a few of them and have since rewatched others. But the Daniel Craig ones, the first was July of last year. Was the first time I watched Casino Royale and then moved through. I don't know what it is about them that I've just not bothered with, but love this. And I think I prefer this to Casino Royale. But by some stretch, I think the action set pieces are amazing. Daniel Craig sort of, I don't know, it feels as if he sort of moved into the role a little bit more, enjoys it a little bit more. He's got that sort of, feels like he's got a bit more freedom, and I think I like it because it's not a typical Bond. Or from what I've seen, Daniel Craig doesn't feel like a typical Bond. So yeah, brilliant from start to finish. Loved it.
Yeah, I'm kind of like in the middle of you two. Like, I Bond's fine. Like, I've seen a lot of the older ones, but it was more when I was a kid, and I remember watching. Is it The World's Not Enough? The one with the boat thing, the like stealth boat.
That's Tomorrow Never Dies.
Tomorrow Never Dies. Okay, and I remember watching that. I remember playing like the games and stuff, but I was never like fully into it and stuff. So, the newer James Bond films for me were kind of like sort of touch and go sort of thing. I'd seen Casino Royale and stuff, Quantum of Solace, I'm sure I had on DVD. Again, I didn't really remember them, to be honest. But watching this, like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's one of those movies that, like, for me, it kind of had a bit of everything. Like, it had, like, the kind of some cheesier parts and some more sort of the history of Bond, or like his sort of like almost like a backstory and stuff as well. So, yeah, again, I think I'd seen this before, but I think I'd fallen asleep because I didn't remember the whole of the third act. Like, I remembered everything up until like he gets to Glencoe. Didn't remember anything about the rest of it. So it was quite refreshing to watch, to kind of watch almost as a first watch. But yeah, I thought it was a very good film. Of course. So as we kind of said there, Daniel Craig was is this the third one that he was in then? Colin?
Yes.
Yeah. So I know Todd there was saying more about Daniel Craig stepping into the role. Did you notice Colin is obviously a big fan of Bond, that this was maybe more he kind of got in the swing of things? Did that help the movie, do you think?
Yeah, 100%. And in researching for this, I didn't realise that at the time Casino Royale, Sam Mendes had actually came out and said that he wasn't sure if Daniel Craig was suited for the role, or more, I think he was more leaning, having previously worked with Craig, leaning towards it, the role wasn't suited to him. Like, he wanted Daniel Craig to do perhaps not a franchise role and more independent roles, or not independent, but different roles to this. Obviously, he must have changed this tune for the fact that he can, continually work with him well, at least in 2 Bond films, back to back. This is definitely kind of, for me, even though I prefer Casino Royale overall, for me, this is the peak of the Daniel Craig era. It's the perfect blend of quote unquote new Bond when it was rebooted with him, and there's enough silliness and cheesiness and a bit of the swagger of like Brosnan, and even like there's daftness of Roger Moore at times. Talking about the section in Glencoe, it felt like James Bond does Home Alone, kind of, and I loved that. Some people through reading reviews hated it for like the fact that it becomes a bit silly, but for me, I think the flow of this film is really, really good. It gets very dark at times. It gets a bit silly, a bit camp, and then by the time you've got that finale kind of sequence in the church, with Judi Dench and Javier Bardem and Daniel Craig, it's proper bleak. It's one of the bleakest endings, I would say, in a James Bond film. But yeah, Daniel Craig is he just for me for the longest time. Brosnan was my Bond because I grew up with him. Loved all the other ones for different reasons, but now that Daniel Craig's finished his 5-run stint after No Time to Die, I would consider him to be my Bond now. Like it's my favorite era of Bond, even though it's probably got the highest of highs. It's definitely got the lowest of lows. Certainly with Quantum of Solace and we're going to get onto it, but Spectre as well. But for this, I think he's like I say, he's excellent in the multifaceted way that Bond needs to be. So like is womanizing, but also his action stuff. Daniel Craig did do quite a lot of the stunt work himself. And then just the silliness with the ending, but also his tenderness towards Judi Dench, I thought was a real nice development of their relationship. But yeah, no, I 100% agree with Tom's with Todd's feeling of this is kind of Daniel Craig finally becoming like making James Bond his own.
Good stuff. Perfect. Todd, do you want to kind of piggyback in the back of that a bit more about Daniel Craig as Bond?
Yeah, like I say, I mean, I'm the same. I went to the cinema with the school, I think, a couple of years off the belt to see the Pierce Brosnan James Bonds, and liked them because they were ridiculous. Like, it didn't what I knew of James Bond, and like the DB7 that turned invisible and turned on the side as it flew through glaciers and shit. Like, that to me wasn't what James Bond was.
It was a DB7, but it's fine. Carry on.
A very nice sports car.
Just stick with the Aston Martin. Stick with the Aston.
It was an Aston Martin. It was a very nice car, turned invisible, and flew through glaciers. And like, I don't know, I love that this is grounded. Like, although there's like ridiculous parts, like you say, that the silliness is still, it feels real. And again, we'll get to Spectre because I don't know. There's a level of Daniel Craig that I really respect, not just as an actor but as a bloke. And I think he brings that sort of lack of. He's not bothered about how he looks in certain roles or the roles that he takes, as long as he's having a good time with them. And I think that's a big part of this. Just the thing, like when he in that opening sequence when he's fighting on the train, just after the bike sequence, and he like lands and like does his cuff. Like fixes his cuff, and I was like, that's so James Bond. Like that's the only way I could see it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I think I enjoy this more than any other James Bond film I've seen, and I think that's a big part of it. Is like other James Bond films are great films. I just enjoyed this, and will watch it. I've held off just because of like rewatching films and stuff. Watching No Time to Die, I still haven't seen it. I didn't see it at the cinema. So I'm kind of like I'm ready now for the end of his arc. But yeah, like I think he bounces well off Bardem. I think I know we'll get to other people, but I just think he's that sort of, obviously he's the central figure because he's James Bond, but he bounces off everybody really well. And again, there's some moments that you look and you're like, is that James Bond? But it's Daniel Craig's James Bond, and that's what matters. Yeah, I think he's fantastic, and I have written down actually "Adult Home Alone," which is
nice,
which is absolutely spot on. and something that I'm there for. Do you know what I mean? It's something that like it takes a little bit different. Just before we move on to Massey, the where he goes up to Scotland, is that like a canon thing? Is that like something from previous films, or is it like a nod to previous Bonds?
I think Fleming does list in one of the books. It might be on Her Majesty's Secret Service, but his father's from Glencoe,
Right.
so it is considered canon. But there's a bit in this film where it lists his name as, I didn't note this down, but it's like John Adam Bryce or something like that. That's his actual name,
Right.
which some Bond fans like and some Bond fans don't like. But I'm kind of intrigued to see what they go. We won't get onto this because we don't talk about No Time to Die. But is the James Bond persona and 007, is that a kind of moniker and like not personality, but like person that you take on as a 00 agent? In No Time to Die, like spoiler alert, I know you've not seen it, Todd, but someone else in his absence has taken on the 007 moniker, and then he subsequently, like, that's a bit of contention between him and the person that's 007. So they've kind of installed in the universe that it is possible to be replaced as 007. They don't become James Bond per se, but they become 007, so it's not a far stretch to say that James Bond himself's a fictional character. That's not how Fleming wrote him, but
that's
canonically, for them to continue this as like a shared universe thing rather than a reboot again. Or this is the first set. Well, technically, bloody hell, some James Bond background, but technically, every film is a standalone film. There's a couple of films that have got carryovers, like M, for example. Not just Judi Dench, but previously, Blofeld appears in a couple of the older films, so there is a kind of universal.
Is his wife as well as in like two of them, isn't it? Is she not carry across films like His Majesty's Secret Service or something? Is that not?
She dies in that, so probably not.
No, I think is she not the one before? No, or something.
I don't think she is.
Oh, okay.
Might be wrong. I mean, I've not watched the Connery ones for ages and the Lazenby one, but there's certain carryovers, but there's very few between Bonds. Judi Dench's M was only really one of them, so there is precedent for it to be kind of like that. But back to your original point, if this is Bond as in like written like Fleming, the Glencoe is canon in terms of it's where his father's from, not necessarily his parents, but it's where his father's from.
Yeah, I just didn't know whether it was like a nod to like Connery, or whether do you know what I mean, whether it was like, oh, he is where previous Bonds, but I wasn't sure. Yeah, sorry, go on. So that's Daniel Craig is fantastic.
Yeah, I don't need to say much more. I was going to say about Nod Connery. I did read, I think it was IMDb, that Albert Finney's character was I think Sean Connery was approached to play him, which would have been nice.
I don't know how much he was approached in terms of it was discussed within. Well, it was discussed by the Broccolis and Mendes, but then Mendes came out and just was pretty much like, nah, that would be too much of a distraction. Which I agree. It would have been a bit silly.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. There was one thing with obviously the Scotland connection that I didn't like, was the fact that he's obviously from Scotland, but he loves England so much. Like that just felt completely unbelievable to me. Everything else is absolutely fine, but that just felt completely unbelievable to me.
Thanks for making us feel welcome.
Sorry. Well, you're northern. You're not exactly English.
Yeah, it doesn't count, does it?
Yeah, exactly. You can join us. It's fine.
Thanks.
Moving on from Daniel Craig, shall we move on to his sort of like counterfoil in the film, Javier Bardem as Raul Silva. Personally, again, I thought it was a really interesting character. Again, with links to kind of the past of James Bond and the MI6, MI5.
Yes, MI6.
MI6. I always get mixed up. MI5 is real, right?
Yes.
MI6 isn't. Is that right? Or is it?
No, they both are.
Oh, okay. The James Bond people. Anyway, Raul Silva played by Javier Bardem. Todd, thoughts on his portrayal?
Yeah, so we haven't talked about Bardem much, other than what was the Being the Ricardos? Is that the only film we talked about with him in, where
Maybe
he obviously played a stinger?
Potentially, yeah. Thinking about I don't think we have discussed him.
We've talked about him.
Wait, was he the Horse and Nope? No.
So
Anyway,
Jesus Christ. Yeah, he's a phenomenal actor, and I need to make clear, because I think on that being the Ricardo's moment, I went in on the whole film because I hated it. But he puts in a performance everywhere else. I thought he was amazing. I thought he was that right level of sort of, not, is camp the word? At times he is a little bit camp and a little bit over the top. Those teeth, he works with them so well, with that smile that like sort of. I don't know. At first, I was like, when I first watched it, I was a little bit put off at the fact that they were so very clearly fake teeth. Like, you know, obviously at the end you realise they are fake teeth for a reason. They are actually fake teeth in the film. But like, it put me off at first. The second time watching it, I loved the fact that, you know, he works with them so well. Yeah, the mannerisms. He has this sort of charm about him. And I know that's weird to say because he's an asshole right the way through the film, but there's something that you want to watch. There's something that you want to listen to, and when he's in that final act when he's chasing Bond down, I wanted like a sort of a face off. Do you know what I mean? I wanted that big moment, and I wasn't disappointed when we sort of didn't get it. You know, when it was more him and M. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic and was the perfect use of him. Not too much of him. It's a James Bond film. We want James Bond, but you've got that constant threat of him. And I thought, and again, we'll get to sort of how much we use villains, I'm sure, in a little while. But he was absolutely fantastic. Yeah, Colin.
Yeah, I thought he's up there as one of the best ever Bond villains for me. Just quickly on a side note of it, Kevin Spacey was approached by Mendes to be the villain in this, but he had to, I think it was scheduling conflicts or something like that. So he was approached. It's not like he was considered whatever. He was actually approached but declined. And I'm glad he did. Not anything against Spacey, like but prior to everything that had come out, he would have been an amazing Bond villain. But that's by the by. Javier Bardem. From his opening sequence, which is when he's walking down that big like server room on his little island and stuff like that, and the story he's telling about the rats and stuff, all the way down to the kind of seductiveness when he sits between Bond's legs and puts his hands on his legs and says about his first time, and then Daniel Craig like perfectly delivers what makes you think this is my first time, and he just sits back and goes, "Oh, Mr. Bond," and it's. Their chemistry is excellent. All their conversations on the island when they're outside talking about prior to shooting the whiskey glass off of the lassie's head and stuff. I think he's so foreboding. I think as a villain, like there's from when you first meet him, there's all this bubbling under the surface, and then it kind of comes out quite a lot during the sequence when he's in that glass cage and talking to M. And he reveals the prosthetic, sorry, not the prosthetic, but the fake teeth. And then his face collapses in, and you can see, like, he obviously took his cyanide tablet as M and MI6 had instructed him to do so, and it had destroyed him. And obviously that's when he becomes unhinged. Yeah, the sequence with M in the church at the end, it's when he sees that she's been hit and she's injured and stuff, and it's like he genuinely cares a little bit for that in the moment, but I think that's because he wasn't able to do it, or he wasn't able to hurt her. And then there's the scene when he's like telling her to shoot them both through the head. It's completely deranged and unhinged, and he plays it perfectly. And then his death kind of sequence when he gets the knife in the back, and he just does this big over the top like lean back, and his mouth's open. He's like like. He balances, similar to the whole film and similar to Daniel Craig, he balances, I think, like old school, like Dr. Evil-esque parody of James Bond villains all the way to, you know, up there with the best villains I've probably considered and seen in a film. I think he nails it. He's a great actor, as you know, from his filmography. But for this is probably one of my favorite of his roles. Up there, I would probably say with No Country for Old Men, which is probably what he's best known for. I think he's amazing. He's absolutely stunning in it. Massey, what did you think of Mr. Bardem?
Yeah, I get the same thing. I felt like he was quite I don't know. It must have been a couple of years after Dark Knight, but it's quite Joker-esque, like some of like the way that he plans stuff.
Yeah, sorry, just to interject. We will get onto it, but this was heavily influenced
Was it?
by both the first two Nolan Batman films.
Makes sense. Makes absolute sense because that's kind of what I felt when I was watching him. I'm not saying you're doing like a parody of the Joker or anything like that, but I just felt there was like that sort of like level of like villainy where it's like almost charismatic as well as being like a really bad guy. But it was kind of one of those as well that you could sort of empathize with his reasons for being a bad guy and like being let down by um the organization that was meant to be sort of like supporting him and or that he was doing the work for and stuff. So obviously I'm not saying that what he did was absolutely right, but you kind of empathize with a little bit about some of the stuff. The only sort of thing that I didn't like, and I totally get the death and kind of like being a bit more over the toppy sort of thing. That was the only thing I wasn't exactly bought on. I thought it was a little bit anticlimactic, his death, and like a bit like, why was he doing it like that? But again, I from what you were saying there, Colin, I understand like the reasoning behind it. That's definitely something that I can understand. But yeah, I thought overall he was brilliant. You're right. One of the things I wrote down was the homoerotic stuff that was happening between Bond and Silva. I thought that was like a lot of times, like films, if it's like something like that, wouldn't really lean that way, and like sort of lean into it, but they really did, and I thought that was like quite a not a brave way of doing it, but it was just sort of like it took the power away from Silva when Bond was able to just clap back with that sort of stuff. So I thought that was like a great show of well, both of them actually, and why they were like the perfect protagonist and antagonist for me. Um, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed his performance. I thought he was really good. I thought it was up there with his being Ricardo's performance as well. I thought that was phenomenal. So yeah. Thinking about the others in the film, obviously we had as you said, Collie, you mentioned M and obviously her kind of send off as Judi Dench's sort of send off. I know obviously again. I'll be coming back to yourself, Collie, quite a bit because obviously you are the Bond resident. But how did you feel Judi Dench was and the send off that she got from this film?
Yeah, I think it was the perfect M film as well, coming from the beginning when she tells Moneypenny to take the shot and she ends up obviously shooting Bond. And you can tell that M in that moment's fuming because she like turns around to the window and puts her hand in her pockets and just stares out as soon as she hears that like Agent Downer. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but she hears that Agent Down or whatever. So you can tell that she's upset in that moment, both professionally and personally. Her and Bond have a very interesting dynamic. And then there's the subsequent kind of antagonistic relationship that she has with Ray Fiennes' is Mallory that comes in. She's told that she's going to essentially get forced into retirement, so that's an interesting dynamic. The kind of not court scene, but the kind of hearing scene later on, I thought was really interesting when she's reading out the poem that her husband. She said that her husband was into his poetry and stuff. I thought that was really cool, and then coming back to the church sequence, her and Silva, I thought was just amazing. It was sad. It was one of the first times I remember, if not the first time I remember myself being sad in a Bond film. It was quite a gut punch for a character like that to be killed off in that manner. Yeah, she'd been in it since, I think her first performance was GoldenEye, so she'd been there through all of Brosnan's, and then so I think this was her 8th M. That would have been if she was in her 4 Brosnans, and then sorry, not 4, it's 7. Sorry, then if this was the 3rd Daniel Craig. So a long run from mid-90s, 95 I think was GoldenEye perhaps, or maybe 96. So a long time in the role with 2 different Bonds, and it was sad to see her. It was sad to see her pass away, but I think it was a fitting handoff to Ralph Fiennes, who's an amazing actor in his own right, and I think in the subsequent two films he's really a standout as a character to be this new kind of M who, like, you know, there's a sequence when Bond kind of states that he knows what he was in Northern Ireland and was captured by the IRA for multiple months and stuff. So he's been there, done that in terms of on the field stuff. Sorry, I'm kind of diverging a little bit into Ralph Fiennes' character, but he was a really good passing of the torch to him, I thought, for M, and Judi Dench was excellent, as she was in every single Bond film. She was really good. It was a good culmination to her and Bond's relationship, I thought.
Definitely, and like just to jump on the back of Ralph Fiennes, I know we've kind of talked about the two M's really, but that was that was something that stood out for me was when it was that court scene in the or sort of the hearing, and when Silva's men come in, and then you eventually see Mallory pick up the gun, and sort of that kind of like showed like he knew kind of what he was doing, and I think there was like a show of respect between Bond and him after having Bond almost seeing that he knows how to handle himself kind of thing, and I thought that was quite an interesting dynamic with Ralph Fiennes. But yeah, you're right, Ralph Fiennes is great. Like I love him. Todd, thoughts on the M's? Eminem?
Yeah, I knew it was coming. Anyway, right. Yeah, I thought Judi Dench needed a big send off just because of who she. If she hadn't been in this many films, she needed that moment, and I thought the poem was the moment. Like, it was really cool seeing her and Kincaid. You know, there's an alternative reality in Skyfall where them two run off together. As like an old little couple who lived in the middle of Scotland, but. Yeah, it was nice to see her have a moment of like of power, I suppose. Just because, so she's not that behind the desk figure. She's not the person on the microphone. She's there. She's in the field. Yeah, and Ralph Fiennes he's amazing, and I love that he comes in as this sort of like sort of stick in the mud type bloke who, you know, is going to sort of almost be a foil to Bond type thing, and I love that was how it was set up until you realise he's actually there for the right reasons. He's there to support it, and I think it feeds nicely into the sort of they have to go off grid. Obviously, like the old James Bond films, like focus on like technology and look at this car that's got all these gadgets. Where now, because everybody's got all these gadgets, it's good that they go the other way. Do you know what I mean? And him saying like about stop tracking him. Do you know what I mean? Delete all the files. I thought that was a brilliant moment. And just getting to just as we move on, like supporting actors. Ben Whishaw, who's like he's one of these people who just seems to be up and coming but he's brilliant in everything. There's a film. Is it Surge? He's in. I get the name wrong, but yeah, and he's just fantastic. He's that right level of quirky. He's got the comedy without it taking you out of the performance. And I think all of them that I've mentioned there, so like Ralph Fiennes, Judi Dench, and Ben Whishaw, they all have that like that ability to have a bit of crack, to be able to like make you smile and make you laugh without like going right. Which again, I'll get to in Spectre. We're in a James Bond film here. Like there has to be some level of seriousness, I suppose. Don't take me too far out of it. Yeah, sorry. So I've jumped. I don't know if either of you have anything more about Ben Wishaw's.
I probably personally love Ben Whishaw. I thought he was great as soon as he popped up. Like even his voice as well. Obviously, excuse me. Obviously, I've been in Paddington as well. Like the voice is like almost iconic. So like I think like having that up your sleeve as well as you say, being like that sort of level of quirky that isn't off-putting. I think sometimes characters can be quirky for the sake of being quirky, but he wasn't. It was like you could like almost see it in the way that he was like this sort of tech genius and a nerd, but not like a stereotypical kind of nerd, if that makes sense. So yeah, I loved Ben Whishaw. I thought he was great. Collie, thoughts on him?
Yeah, I thought he was class. I thought he was perfectly charming. His first introduction when he's in the art gallery with Bond and they're talking about the big old ship and stuff. Him and Craig's relationship there was you kind of got it from the offset that they were going to be a good match and a good bit of banter between them. Even the sequence when he kind of messes up a little bit when he plugs in the the laptop of Silva's, and then he like fucks up the whole system and stuff like that. It's when he quickly unplugs it and he goes, "Oh shit!" Kind of that moment. I just thought he was amazing. I thought he was really really good. A good supporting Q. Obviously there was a long-standing Q for a long time, and then Cleese was in it for a couple, or well, two, I think. But for Daniel Craig's Q, I thought Ben Whishaw was great, and he continued to be so through the other films. But this was a great introductory film for him, and I thought he was a good addition.
Definitely. Any other characters you want to talk about before we move on to kind of like more the cinematography side of stuff?
Naomi Harris as Moneypenny,
yeah.
I thought was really good as well. Get introduced to her right at the beginning. It's obviously her that shoots James, and her scene with him in prior to the casino sequence when she's like shaving him and stuff like that. I thought that was really really cool. Just kind of building on their flirtatious relationship, which I don't know if either of you know, but like throughout the old films and stuff, there's always hints of a relationship or like flirtatious relationship between Bond and Moneypenny, and then obviously it's revealed later on that that's her surname. We as an audience don't know it throughout the film, as Bond doesn't either. So the recasting or the reboot of Moneypenny and Q in this film, I think are spot on. And I know, kind of like we just talked about, it's a reboot of M as well. So bringing all those new versions of the characters into the Daniel Craig Bonds, I thought this film was really, really well, good for it.
Excellent, good stuff. So cinematography. Obviously, we had Mr. Deakins back as the cinematographer for this. There's some absolutely wonderful shots, some beautiful things. Again, for me, certainly the most of the Glencoe sort of stuff stands out. I mean, Scotland's beautiful anyway, but Glencoe is other level. Obviously, the iconic shot of him standing outside the car, hands in pockets, kind of looking out over the valleys is wonderful. But a lot of like after the kind of home invasion thing with the house on fire in the background, I thought some of those shots were absolutely wonderful as well. Todd, was there anything that stood out for yourself, cinematography wise?
Yeah, the fight. You're gonna have to I can't remember exactly what was happening, but it's with the computer screen in the background where it's essentially only lit by that sort of huge screen with like the blue waves in the background. I thought that was incredible. Like it's such a bold decision to make to make shots where it's not properly lit and you're only working with shadows. To be honest, I thought the entire film, the bike chase at the beginning into the train sequence was like none of it felt like it was shot on a green screen. It all felt organic. It all felt real. And like I think when we get to Spectre, that's where I sort of like really fell off it. Where but even the shots of the coffins of the agents who died in the field, where you had like that sort of the long shot of, I'm sure it's 6 coffins, and then Judi Dench stood at the top. I thought that things like that, where it's just again should be simple shots, really well done. Yeah, but like you said, the stuff in Glencoe was amazing, but that shot with the fight scene with the screen in the background was out of this world. Colin, I don't know if there was.
Yeah. Overall, it's just a stunningly shot film. First ever James Bond to be shot completely digitally as well. So obviously a bit of a change and a departure from the way it was previously shot. But yeah, Deakins is a master of his craft. We've talked about him on previous episodes, and we'll continue to talk about him throughout this one and in the future. But yeah, he just knows how to shoot a film. I will say that during the bike sequence, there is quite a distinct one of Bond when he's on the bike that looks really dodgy for me. And even at the time, I was like, oh, that looks a bit shit. But he pulls it back when they're fighting on top of the train, and you can see them in the back, and they're coming around the big kind of viaduct towards the tunnel that they need to go through, which obviously some of that's computer generated because I don't think that's a real locale or whatever. But yeah, it looks amazing. The shot of Bond falling after being shot off the train, I thought was really cool. And the standout shot for me personally was the one that we've already discussed, which is when Bardem's moving down the room in his first monologue. I thought that was class. I think they had to, like, from what I was reading, they built that room as long as it needed to be for him to walk at the pace he was walking at and finish his monologue by the time he'd reached Bond. They like calculated how far that needed to be, and just for that shot to be held for the longest time, and him to do that, I thought was excellent. It was a proper like, oh holy shit! Like Bond's always looked good. Like there's always been good sequences in that in Bond, but this and even Spectre, which again we'll move on to, a different cinematographer, of course, but yeah, Bond can be shot in a way that it's up there with the top films in terms of cinematography. I don't really. You think of stunts and stuff, or I do certainly when I think of Bond. I think of stunts and that, not necessarily big sweeping like vista shots and stuff. But this definitely allowed Deakins to do that. The shot, like you say, in nighttime with the ice and stuff as well in Glencoe, I thought was really really cool. I like the lighting of that, and then yeah, just back on what you're talking about when they're in Shanghai, when in that glass building and fighting. Deakins was saying that the crew members kept bumping into the glass because of the way it was lit up properly, and it was a bit of a nightmare, I think, to shoot, but it was worth it. It looks incredible.
It's funny just thinking about that. Actually, I kind of not forgot about that sequence, but like I thinking about how you're saying it's like kind of influenced by a Dark Knight. There's also a scene similar like that with the Dark Knight as well, isn't there? When he's in China, I think it is, and he's when he snatches the boy and then gets lifted up by the plane. Like that's all kind of like a high rise thing with like lights in the background sort of thing, and that fight scene there. So yeah, you can kind of see that influence. But yeah, that was great as well. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. I was gonna say, obviously, you mentioned it there, Colin, about some of the CGI parts at the start. That was one of the notes I took down as well. It's like there was a couple of times it was kind of like the CGI was like, it was almost obvious, but it didn't take me out of it. To be fair, like I think there's sometimes when the CGI is a bit rough, it can take you out of it, but it didn't for me. But I also I love the bit where at that chase for getting onto the train. He didn't just jump on the train. He drove his motorbike full pelt into the train and used that momentum to like kind of jump onto it. I was like, I don't know why I was creasing at that. And there was a bit as well where he was shooting at the digger that had the hand down, and then his gun like ran out of bullets, and he just like lobbed the gun as well. Like just little bits like that I thought were like, again, really kind of camp, but then like also really funny and really fitting for what they're trying to do. So.
I think stuff like that is the kind of what we've talked about a few times. It's the blend of the grittiness that Casino Royale had brought, and then it brings it back to maybe like the Brosnan-esque, and even Roger Moore at times silliness. Yeah, that's why it's a top 3 Bond for me. It's the perfect blend of doesn't take itself too serious, but it's also not like over the top and takes you out of it kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything else you guys want to discuss about this? I mean, we spoke about him yesterday, of course. Thomas Newman, the score. Again,
yeah,
I thought
class score. Yeah, but if we're going to talk about the music, absolute belter of a theme song. Absolute belter of a theme song. I was watching some YouTube on it last night, and Adele does her performance at Griffith Observatory in LA.
Oh wow!
And she sings this. Oh, it's amazing. It's so good. We can tweet it out or whatever at some point. But yeah, it's class.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Just quick. I wasn't aware until very recently that the Bond chord was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing, and there's this video of this lad explaining it, and I couldn't find it in Spectre, and I'm gonna have to watch it back. But as soon the Leonardo DiCaprio meme of him pointing at as soon as that chord went off, now I was like, oh, it's there. So it's the first time since after I'd watched Casino Royale and right the way through for the first time. Then I found out about the Bond chord, so now I'm like obsessed with it. So now when I'm watching for films, and I wrote down it is 1 hour, 20 minutes and 53 seconds. The Bond chord hits, just in case anybody was looking for it.
So the Bond chord, is that like the twangy chord?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I want. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's fine. I assume that's what
twangy,
it was.
Slinky plonky, all the musical terms.
Exactly. Thomas Newman will come for your job, mate. Right. Anything else we want to chat about with Skyfall, or should we move on to the superior Bond film?
What, we're talking about Casino Royale?
Oh no, Moonraker. No.
Moonraker's a belter.
Is it? I don't know. I was just guessing it.
Random Bond film.
happy enough with that. Oh yeah, do you want to go through the our scores for
Yeah.
Skyfall? Collie, let's give everyone a surprise. What did you think of Skyfall?
It's a 5 out of 5 for me.
Fair enough, Todd.
It was 4.5 for me.
Fair. I'll put a 4. I think it's one of those that, like, after talking about it and going to a rewatch, it's probably going to go up again, to be honest. But yeah, absolutely 4. That's no knock on the film, because I thought it was really good. Okay, look, let's move on to Spectre. So, a cryptic message from James Bond's past sends him on a trail to uncover the existence of a sinister organization named Spectre. With a new threat dawning, Bond learns a terrible truth about the author of all his pain in his most recent missions. Okay, with Skyfall being such a high, Collie, what were your thoughts on Spectre?
It was such a letdown. It was such a letdown. Technically speaking, it's still a very good Bond film, but it follows the Casino Royale to Quantum of Solace relationship, which is good Bond film, mediocre Bond film. Technically, Quantum of Solace is a bad Bond film, but it's the peaks and troughs of Daniel Craig's Bond continue with this, and you just think Mendes is back. It's another Daniel Craig. It's going to be the first with new Q, new Moneypenny, new M. Like Christoph Waltz is going to be the villain in it. Spectre, which is a long-standing foil of Bonds from the old films, is back. Like, this is going to be amazing. And it was a lot of missed opportunity, I felt. Even after watching it a couple of times for this, I have watched this film probably 10 plus times since this came out, and I've tried to like it, and I've tried to follow what they were trying to do, and it feels a bit half-arsed at times. There's a few instances where I feel like I'm backed up in feeling like that. First and foremost, being the man that we're talking about for these episodes, Sam Mendes, originally wasn't going to come back for this, decided that he was gonna, and it feels a bit like just a half-cocked Bond. If he had went into Skyfall planning Spectre, it maybe would have landed a bit better. But yeah, just a bit of a letdown for me. Not by Daniel Craig and not by the performances per se, but the story more than anything, I think, let this film down.
Fair. Todd?
Yeah, it was for me. It was more the action side of things that really sort of took me out of it. I think where Skyfall was really strong was that the action sequences were the right length. They didn't overstay their welcome. They were punchy and worked really well for the film. Whereas with this, I just felt like they went on forever. It felt like they were trying to fluff the film out a little bit. Like I don't know. It just I didn't get it. I think you're wasting some of the best talent from from all over the world. You got some of the best actors that are currently working in your film, and you're not utilizing them properly. Yeah, it wasted. It is the word. And I know we talked about like some silliness. This felt like they were trying to appeal at times to a different audience as well. There was some moments of it that were like the bloke singing in the car and then them playing music in that way. It felt almost slapsticky. And I was like, this isn't what I'd watch a James Bond film for. It wasn't a terrible film by any stretch of the imagination. But it's not something I'll go back to. I'm pleased I've watched it, ready to watch No Time to Die, and then I'm done.
Fair enough. Yeah, I echo all your sentiments. I would say that I think that the opening sequence was wonderful. Like, I really enjoyed that opening sequence. I thought it was really well done. But the rest of it, just I think calling it half cocked is absolutely right. I think you're spot on. There's definitely there's definitely a feeling that Sam Mendes maybe wasn't fully in on it. And it's a shame, because I think there was a good idea there, but it's almost like they tried to set up all the stuff after without really kind of like there were some breadcrumbs in the other ones, but it didn't feel like as fully connected as I would hoped for what they were trying to do and make Spectre this whole nasty, shady cabal that had every sort of like fingering every single pie and stuff. But yeah, it did feel like a bit of a waste. So we're kind of saying that obviously the performances maybe weren't the sort of the letdown. It was more kind of the story wise. So thinking of the performances, I mean, did you notice any sort of differences between obviously like Daniel Craig, for instance, from Skyfall to here? Was there anything that sort of took you out in terms of performance wise, or was it purely just a story, Collie?
A lot of it was the story. A lot of people from reviews and even talking about people that I know that are big James Bond fans, they feel like it's forced. They kind of, oh, you and Blofeld were actually like half brothers or step or whatever, like brothers or whatever growing up. I didn't mind that much. There needed to be, I think, a personal reason for Blofeld to have kind of orchestrated all this stuff that's been happening to Bond for the last couple of films. It felt a bit shoehorned in, some of it. One sequence, we're going all the way to the end, but when they're in the kind of abandoned MI6 building and Bond's looking for Blofeld, and there's all the cells that are lit up with like the A4 sheets of everyone, I was just like, that's a bit silly. Like, what is he just? Oh, Bond's coming quickly, get the printer out, and I just that just felt a bit weird. It'd be different if it was like a screen and they were just like flashing up there or whatever. That would have been fine. But like all the lit cells, I thought was a bit silly. Why is there a boat left underneath the abandoned building with keys in it? Right. That's we're talking about the film in general, but it's stuff like that I just don't feel in the previous Daniel Craig films that was really the kind of it just so happened to end up that way kind of vibes. But sorry, just to come back to Daniel Craig, I think this film does give one chance of changing the relationships that he has on the screen. That Leia Seydoux, Madeline one, I thought was really nice. Like there was a lot of tenderness and Bond falls like legit in love with her, which we hadn't seen in any of the Daniel Craigs. So I thought that was interesting. But you could argue that he fell in love with Eva Green's character in Casino Royale because that's a kind of theme throughout. But this was one that you actually fell in love and got to spend a lot more time and actually develop the relationship with, rather than a bit more of an instant thing from Casino Royale. I thought Leia Seydoux was really good. Sorry if we're just quickly moving on to some of the supporting cast as well, but I thought she was excellent. Kind of the standoffish nature of her originally to then her and Bond falling for each other. I thought that was one of the high points of the film. I thought that was really good. She's a great actress. So I've recently seen her in stuff like Dune Part 2 and that. I think she's just class. And I'm playing through Death Stranding at the moment where she's in that as well. Just a really, really top class actress. And I'm glad that like it's one of those things that there's so many Bond women throughout the years that have been established actresses, but they've not really had a chance to do much apart from sleep with James Bond, and she was allowed to be her own character, which I thought was really cool, and I thought she nailed it. So, Todd, what did you think maybe about Craig and some of his supporting cast?
Sorry, just quickly before Todd, I just wanted to quickly double jump on the back you said there about her being able to kind of not just be a Bond girl sort of thing. I don't know how you guys felt with this, but like Monica Bellucci, like I felt she was totally wasted. She just literally was there just like pump Bond, and then she was gone in like 2 seconds. Which
oldest ever Bond girl.
Yeah, maybe that's why they didn't keep her around, because she was needing a Zimmer frame or something like that. I don't know.
That's very ageist of you.
I'm old. Anyway, yeah. Sorry, Todd. On you go. I just wanted to quickly put that in there.
No, yeah, I thought Daniel Craig, like I said, he was back to himself. There was nothing. He was excellent. He was really good, and I thought again, him and Blofeld and the way that they sort of bounced off each other worked really well. I obviously was upset when I wrote this note, but I said about Blofeld, massive actor, huge actor, out like a bitch, and I think that sort of sums up where I am with this film. Like I enjoyed it more on a second watch as well, but I just think he's so good. Christoph Waltz is he can do everything, and it's weird watching him in like Django versus Inglourious Bastards. In this, he uses the same tone to be a good guy and a bad guy. Like, and again, not in a bad way. He just manages to sort of to shape his voice for what he needs, but he sounds exactly the same, and it's that charming, like wanting to bring people in. Yeah, I thought he was excellent, just underutilized. I agree about Leia Seydoux. I thought she was the phrase they use on Sunny is "bed'em and dead'em." Like that's what the type of like how Bond girls are often treated. And it was good to see her have some autonomy and like the scene, the torture scene, which I thought was was excellent. Just that drill that made me feel a bit queasy, which doesn't happen for me in films a lot. But I don't know what it was about it. But them two together and stuff working together was really good. Again, Wishaw and Fiennes and stuff coming back into it again were amazing. I've written Andrew Scott with a little love heart next to him.
You know what's hilarious? On my notes as well, Andrew fucking Scott, love heart.
Literally, the guy is. I mean, he's obviously coming into his own a little bit more now in terms of like lead performances. I still haven't brought myself around to watching All of Us Strangers again. Because I cried like a baby at that film. But he's amazing, and I think out of everybody, he was utilized the best in terms of like where people are underutilized. He's there, just being an absolute prick, and I loved it. I wrote Battle of the Bastards in terms of Andrew Scott and Ray Fiennes. Them two, like they're the stick up the arse, want to do things by the book. Obviously, Andrew Scott's character doesn't want to do things by the book and wants to make some money. I thought, fantastic. Again, amazing cast, left, right, and centre. We haven't even talked about Rory Kinnear.
Rory Kinnear's class.
Like he just plays a very straightforward role. There's nothing sort of big about his character, but he's there every time and again putting in a performance. In terms of the cast around Daniel Craig, obviously because it's his film, they were sensational. Sorry, Massey, if I've just
No, that's absolutely fine. I was going to say Rory Kinnear. What else would have seen him in? Is there anything that would be coming up that potentially I might have seen him in, or
there might be very soon. Might have to watch another film with him in.
Okay.
Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. He's in that.
Oh, is he? Yeah, I think that's what I was talking about. Yeah. Just to say as well, Dave Bautista. Wasted, absolutely wasted for me. Like, he was just used as like the physical side of it, but we all know that he can be a phenomenal actor. I think he was not given much to do. I mean, he was.
I liked his death line. Oh, sheet! Yeah. And he just gets kicked off the train. I thought it was funny. I mean, like he was put in there not. He was for once he was put in there not for his acting chops, but for his size and his physicality.
I suppose that's kind of for me where the disappointment comes in, because we know what he can do. You could have had anyone in there as kind of like the sort of like physical kind of guy, but that was where the disappointment was for me with him. But I understand why you have a big guy.
At this point as well, like this is not something I've just had to flick through his IMDb there. Like the only thing that aside from wrestling that we'd really seen him in was as Drax. So like in the first Guardians film, so it's kind of like with hindsight, we're like, yeah, he's a fucking great actor and he should have had more. Where back in whenever this came out, like it should have, is he that guy? Because at the time, I think people were seeing what he could do, but needed that little bit more time. So but I get where you're coming from. I do think he was wasted. So.
To be fair, that's fair enough. Like I didn't even take into account that when it was released and stuff. But yeah, I suppose you're right. That he's maybe still in that sort of stages, but it's just knowing what he can do now. It's a shame to see him kind of almost relegate, or not even relegate, I suppose. Then at that time, but just being used in that sort of way. Yeah, Christoph Waltz. I've spoke about him a little bit. We kind of touched on his character. Again, I love him. I thought he was. Again, it's like I kind of wanted more from him, but he was used in a way that I feel like I wouldn't say wasted, but I feel like there was definitely more that could be done with him. Colin, did you talk about Christopher Waltz, or did Todd just touch on him?
I briefly talked, I think, in my introduction about how it was just a bit of a letdown. the way that Blofeld was utilized. Gary Oldman was initially approached apparently to play Blofeld, but he didn't want to spend like 6 months filming. Apparently, was one of the big deterrents, and he would have been interesting. But I think Christoph Waltz suits the role more. Certainly from the storyline perspective of the way that they're raised, and his delivery of the lines like cuckoo and stuff, and one when it was like, oh, it was all me, James, the author of all your pain. Like, he's so foreboding and he's so threatening. I think he absolutely nails that. It's just, yeah, like, again, it's just the whole story of it. I thought was a letdown for him and Craig. Like, that could have and should have been like all-time Bond, one of the best villainous actors they've ever probably had in a role, in the villain role, and they kind of dropped the ball a little bit. You know, it's harkening back to like Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill or something like that. Like, he should have been up there for me in terms of just the upper echelons of bad guy performances, and it was just a bit naff is a word that springs to mind. The torture sequence, incredible. Like, that's probably the best showing of the potential that could have been. That and the initial introduction to him when he comes into the table and he's in shadow, and then he looks up to where James is. Like, I remember watching it for the first time and being like, "Holy fuck, here we go," kind of thing, and just a bit of a damp squib. But just on to Andrew Scott briefly that we talk about. Chiwetel Ejiofor, I think is that how you say his name. He was linked with that role, but Andrew Scott got it because he asked for less money, I think. is what I read on IMDb. He asked for like $1 million less on his salary, so yeah, it's Andrew Scott got it. And I think Andrew Scott getting it suits the kind of establishment that they're trying to fight against. I think his smarminess, I think, just comes across really, really well, and is kind of holier than thou. What I'm doing is right, even though I know it's wrong, kind of thing. I think shines through. I think he absolutely nails it. It's one of those I can't picture Ejiofor actually playing it. I think he would have played it in a different way, not necessarily a bad way or anything, but just in a different way that I'm just happy Andrew Scott got the role there. But yeah, just in summary on Christoph Waltz, just waste of potential, I think, which is kind of an overarching feeling for me on this film.
What did you guys think of like Blofeld at the end, where James has him at the bridge, and has a gun trained on him and blah blah, and chooses not to kill him? Was that something you worked for you guys, or personally, I hate that cliche. Like, just kill him. Like, you know what I mean? It saves so much hassle. But yeah, I don't know what you guys thought of that sort of ending for him.
Todd, you can speak on it first.
Yeah, like I don't know really. I didn't really have an opinion. I know it sounds daft. Like,
it might just be me being
something...
completely like like being annoyed at it and just like having that sort of irrational sort of thing to it. But
I don't know. I just kind of like, it's just part of it. Yeah, it wasn't. I think by that point though, I wasn't expecting James Bond tropes or whatever. I wasn't expecting specific things, so I was just taking it as it came because of how the story had gone. If that makes sense. I don't know, Collie, as a seasoned James Bond watcher, if you feel any different.
If this, I think, had come as the second Daniel Craig film, perhaps he would have just gunned him down in the street, because that's just the nature of the Bond that he was. My feeling of why they wrote it the way that they wrote it was that it was to show growth in James's character, mainly through his relationship with Madeline. That's what I think it was. I think he was becoming more than just an MI6 agent of death. I think you could say it was a character thing. I feel, rather than like, it is very cliche. It is very cliche. But it even harkens back, I guess, to like early Bonds, which Austin Powers parody, which is, right, I'm the big bad guy. I'm going to tell you every step of my plan, and then I'm just going to leave you in the room, and I'm going to go away. Bye bye. Like that. It kind of, I totally get both sides of the coin on that you're just like, just fucking shoot him.
Yeah.
But then, on the other hand, one, that would be, if he did do that, I think that would be equally as weird. But I think like this kind of shows a divergence of where James Bond would have went and where he ends up going. It's kind of a fork in the road, so to speak, moment that he could just be vengeful and kill him, but tries to show that to Madeline especially that he's perhaps better at that, because they have discussions through the film. I can't remember the exact quote, but she's just like, how can you live, like this, like with constant this and this and this, and he's like, I don't really think about it. And this is probably one of the first moments, I think, character wise, that he thinks about it. He considers not to do it, to actually take his hand off the trigger or finger off the trigger.
Fair enough.
And I know we won't cover No Time to Die, but it allows that relationship to be continued into No Time to Die. So yeah, I get it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I feel that that's the in-universe justification for it.
That's fair enough. As I say, I think it might just be that case that I was getting a bit jaded with it. And I did watch No Time to Die as part of, because just like I've watched the 2 and then obviously No Time to Die.
Was that a first watch?
Yeah, first watch, yeah. And some of the things that happen in that, I'm like, if you just killed him, then you'd be fine. Like, but yeah, no, I totally understand that. I think it's I appreciate you. Kind of give.
That's just my take on it. I'm not necessarily saying that that's what the intention was, but that's how I read it.
To be fair, you're the James Bond goat, so like, I take.
But that doesn't mean I'm right about everything. That's not. That's just how I took it to be.
Okay. Well, I take it as you're right about everything.
All right, relax.
Okay. So in Skyfall, there was obviously, we spoke about Roger Deakins. It was a different cinematographer here. Someone who is, as you say, is still top of their game. Like I love Hoyt van Hoytma's work, but obviously it was a kind of different sort of movie. What was your thoughts on the cinematography compared to Skyfall? Was there anything that stood out for yourself, Todd? Start with you.
The big, just off the top of my head, the big one for me was Bond and Blofeld on either side of the glass. I thought that was stunning. Where it was like it was backwards and forwards between them, and then Blofeld's face like mirroring Bond's. I thought that was incredible. I know it's CGI and like not necessarily talking cinematography, but a lot of the big action set pieces felt green screeny is the way I would describe it. That the helicopter scene for he's like hanging out the side of a helicopter. It just, maybe it's because they were longer. I recognized it more. Like, when I said like I felt like the action sequences went on for a little bit. Yeah. So for me, there wasn't as much that stood out in Spectre. Like there's nothing where I've sort of I've written down where I'm thinking like that was an incredible. Do you know what I mean? There's at least 6 or 7 moments in Skyfall that I would put up there as like, when we say you could take a screenshot and make it a poster. Like
No,
there's a few of those. You never ever say that, right?
No,
We'll go back and I'll I'll make a little compilation of the times I've fought it over. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, that moment with Blofeld across the glass was amazing. I think the way that the torture scene was shot as well, that could have been fumbled a bit. I thought that was incredible. But no, there's nothing that really like stands out as big for me. Especially in comparison to Skyfall, which was a stunning film. Colin, about you?
I thought it was a very well shot film overall. To be honest, just a quick comment on the either side of the glass sequence. It completely being a big Bond fan, I watched like every trailer. I'd seen all the posters. I was tracking all the promotional material running up to it, and see when he shoots the glass, and it formed the Spectre octopus. At the time, and even now, it still infuriates me. I'm just like, that's so fucking stupid. Like, it just looks bad. I think even in the actual film, I think it looks really fake. That sequence itself, excellent. Like, it is really well shot, and that's not really a commentary on the cinematography. that's a note that I was just like, that fucking octopus is what I've noted down. It just, I get it that it looks cool and that, but it just didn't need to be there. It just didn't need to be there. All the way back to the beginning of the film, I know it's not Deakins that shot this, and Deakins subsequently shot 1917, but I feel that Mendes was practicing the one-shot methodology in the first sequence of the Day of the Dead. That's like simulated one shot almost, with a couple of quite obvious, not quite obvious, but like with some obvious cuts. So I thought that's quite a kind of not foreshadowing in a kind of, it sounds like bad, but it's a practice run. It was a practice run, I think, for Mendes and his kind of mindset directorially to kind of move with the one shot. There was another kind of fixing of, was it his tie that he fixes?
Yeah, we land on the
when the
sofa.
building collapses. Yeah, when he lands on the sofa. I thought, like you say about Skyfall, that was like, oh, this is James Bond moment. I remember seeing that. The helicopter sequence did look a bit funny and silly, but I thought it was a cool bit of stunt work, and I thought it was a cool like sequence to kick off a Bond film. I did think that was pretty sick. And again, not so much on the cinematography, just on the general filming. That explosion of the base is the current largest movie stunt explosion of all time.
Oh wow!
And I only read that yesterday, and I was like, really? Because I feel it's so forgetful. like it wasn't until I rewatched it for a couple of times for this, and having subsequently read that trivia, I was just like, that's the biggest one of all time. It's just kind of like, it's kind of, for me, it's a symbol of the whole film. It's like, I feel like if that's the best one of all time, it's underwhelming. It's underwhelming. It's a term that I've not really used for this film.
It's in the background, isn't it? They're just chatting, and it's in the background or something, isn't it? Is that not how it kind of plays out?
Yeah, they're walking up to the helicopter to fly away, and then they turn around, and then it just goes. like it looks cool. Don't get me wrong. Like, it looks cool, and the fact that it was practical. When we're discussing perhaps like hokey CGI's, I guess a thumbs up to it, but. I just feel like that was just. I just don't feel that because if there's film, like for example, going back to Casino Royale, I don't know if it still is, but that sequence, you've both seen it and probably remember the sequence when he's chasing after Vesper when she's being kidnapped, and he comes over that hill and then flips the car, and the car does all the top. That at the time, at least, was like the most flips that a car had ever done in a stunt work, and that for me stands out like as one of the best ever Bond stunts for me. And you watch the behind the scenes of that, they actually had a big like plunger go into the ground, and that's what caused the car. So like in the passenger seat, they had a big thing that's what pushed the car over, and that's what caused. And then they digitally removed it, so it looks like it just stood the car flipping. I've not talked about this yet, actually, being a Bond film fan, but. There was, for the longest time, in the British Film Museum, I think it was down the road in London, there was a Bond in Motion exhibition. I actually visited it twice, and it had all the cars. It had the V12 Vanquish. That's the reason I knew how to correct you for Die Another Day, is there was the Vanquish, and then there was the Jaguar, the green Jaguar from Die Another Day. There was the remains of the car from Casino Royale, and there was loads of different Bond like vehicles, because it was all about the vehicles in Bond. There was... In Tomorrow Never Dies, the one with the stealth ship, which for me is my number 3 in my top 3 Bonds, just for clarity. The bit in that is it Hertz? I think it's Hertz is like the delivery rental service that you rent cars off of and stuff. Q in that is a Hertz agent, and they've got like his fake passport and stuff. They had loads of stuff in it. But I digress. Because for me, like, there's so many iconic. There's in Tomorrow Never Dies is when he's got the remote control BMW on his phone. He's got the little touchpad that's driven off the top of the car park and lands in a Hertz rental shop. Like that for me that's like the centerpiece of a film. It's the remembering of it. Even in Tomorrow Dies, there's another sequence with a helicopter in the street. Right. This film has, on record, the biggest stunt explosion of all time, and I could barely even remember it. Like when I first read that, I rewatched that, and I was like, oh, it's that bit. Like for me, I just couldn't even remember it. It just because it's so forgetful, and that's kind of a summation, I guess, of all my thoughts on this film. Very forgetful, very half-cocked. Thomas Newman, who we've waxed lyrical about all episode, we're going to do so again in the next film. Spoiler alert! But a lot of the stuff that was in this film was reused from Skyfall, and if that doesn't talk to how half-arsed almost, and I feel bad saying half-arsed because Bond films like this are never half-arsed, I don't feel. But if that just doesn't surmise how underwhelming this film is, then I don't know what is. The fact that the music, a lot of it was reutilized. Thematically, they might claim that, oh yeah, it was like, to show that that both the films are talking to each other. Perhaps, but for it to be so unoriginal, an unoriginal Bond film, if that makes any sense, is kind of what my overarching overall feelings on this. I don't even know what the fuck you asked me, but
No.
yeah, I think it was cinematography, but we went all over the place.
I asked you how your day was. Jesus.
Yeah, it's not very often. I think we discussed this yesterday. It's good when we have, like, when we were picking directors, we're obviously picking directors that have got good filmographies, but it's always good to have a film that I can rant about a little bit in the middle of it. And this and Spectre is one of those. Just coming down from anyway. I don't want to go on about it too much because we've got lots more to talk about. But yeah, that's overall my feelings about this film.
I mean, I'm not even going to try and piggyback in the back of that. I think that was an absolutely perfect summation of James Bond feels. There was one thing I was going to ask you. You said Tomorrow Never Dies was third in your top 3 Bond films. What is your top 3?
Casino Royale, Skyfall, and then Tomorrow Never Dies.
Interesting. Brilliant.
Just on the filming of this, actually. Previous Bond film, first ever to be shot in digital, and then this film and No Time to Die were both shot on film again. So there was rumors that Bond was going to be digital moving forward from Skyfall, but they opted to go back to film for whatever reason. I don't know if Hoyt van Hoytma just preferred that or that was his choice, but yeah, just a little note because I noted it from Skyfall, so I seen that was a bit of trivia about this one, so I thought it was worth mentioning.
Definitely. Okay, let's move on to the Letterboxd reviews then. So, Collie?
It was a 3.5 for me. There was enough in this film that sets it apart as like a good enough film. It was just an underwhelming Bond film coming off of the back of arguably the most celebrated Bond film ever. Just a quick bit of trivia before your ones. One of the eyes in the opening credit sequence is Karen Gillan.
Oh.
And she was, I don't know if it was an interview to do with this or if it was just another one, but she loved to play a Bond villain so she could lick Daniel Craig's head. That's a direct Karen Gillan quote. Unfortunately, she won't have a chance to do that anymore, but maybe a future Bond, she might be a villainess and get to lick their head.
Well, I mean, she could always see him and just lick his head.
Mm-hmm. Get her in the Knives Out franchise. I'd love that. She can lick his head there.
Yeah, I guess.
Todd?
3.5. I bumped it up, so it was a 3 on a first watch. I bumped it up to a 3.5 on a second.
So you changed it on that was on the document, yeah? Okay, fair enough. And me, I gave it a 3. I gave it 3 stars. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's enough in it to be like serviceable. But yeah, it just disappointing overall. Okay, let's move on to another disappointing film. 1917. So April 6th, 1917, as an infantry battalion assembles to wage war deep in enemy territory, 2 soldiers are assigned to race against time and deliver a message that will stop 1,600 men from walking straight into a deadly trap. So, initial thoughts on 1917. We'll go with yourself again there, Collie.
Yeah, I love this film. It's one of my favorite films of all time. For many, many reasons that we'll get into. But yeah, that's my summation of it. I can't really put it any more succinctly than that.
Todd?
Yeah, it's a near perfect film. I think it does what other war films haven't in not just the one shot. The one shot is incredible, but just the characters, the way that it uses dialogue when it needs to, and then it stays silent for so long is ridiculous. But just some of the way that some of the way that it's shot, and again we'll get into it, but yeah, it's a ridiculous film. Massey?
Yeah, same. It's actually made my top 4 in Letterboxd now. It's
Mine too. I
yeah.
changed it. I added it to mine last night.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, it's phenomenal. It absolutely is. When I first watched it, like I think it's my third watch of it, and I don't usually watch movies like over and over again, but I obviously this was for this, but I'd rewatched it after watching it the first time and stuff, and each time I feel like I love it more. Like it's just an unbelievably brave film as well, which I think is it's just it's unbelievable. So that'd be fine. I think we'll move on to the next one.
Just done.
Yeah, no. So I mean, this one obviously there is sort of a cast to this, but I think we should maybe kind of touch on Sam Mendes first of all, and his sort of like creation of this film, and the sort of ideas behind it. Todd, take us through kind of a bit more about Sam Mendes and what he did in this film that you thought was interesting or good, or what was even bad, if there was anything.
Honestly, I didn't try to be like a dick about it, but I was looking for things to pick at. Do you know what I mean? Just so that it wasn't just an absolute like love fest for the. And I genuinely couldn't think of anything where I'm like, oh, that let me down. That was a bit weak. There's nothing in this film. There's no moment where I'm bored. There's no moment where I'm not. I don't fit. Every scene adds. Every single minute of the film adds to the film, adds to the characters. I think the choice of, and early door spoilers, I don't know why I listen if you haven't seen it, but of killing off the brother first was an amazing one, because the first time I watched it, I just didn't see it coming. I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was going to be these two like people going right the way through together, and it was going to be this incredible story, and I just think that added more depth. George McKay is. I know we're going to get onto specific actors like in a bit, but he's sort of carving himself out a bit of a niche as this character actor, but not over the top character, not big characters, just these kind of real people, and that's what this felt through the whole film. It was real. Every conversation felt like it was. It wasn't tacked on. There wasn't a need to move the story forward. It was just these people interacting. Some of the sequences, the rat in the bunker was so well done, because it wasn't like this big comedic build up of like, oh, don't go near it. Like the rat was there. We knew it was there. Then we knew there was a tripwire, and within seconds that rat hit that tripwire. Like, it was moments like that where you realise he loved this. Sam Mendes loved this film and loved making it, because it's a labour of love. That's what it is. Yeah. So without going into specific actors, that's all I'll say. Obviously, there's the one shot, and when we got on, cinematography is a big thing for it. But yeah, you can see that this guy really wanted to make this film. This was something that he's been working towards for a long time.
Coley?
This was his first official writing credit, film-wise, which I thought was very interesting. And yeah, just talk about the casting, like overall. One of the good notes, or one of the interesting notes that I got about this, was that he persuaded so many of the big actors that you see throughout it to perform or to appear in the film, and the agreement was that they don't have to then go out and promote the film, which I thought was interesting, because I think that actually benefits the film. And I remember watching it for the first time and being like, oh, holy shit, that's Mark Strong, or holy shit, that's Colin Firth, or Andrew Scott, or just all these actors that were just appearing for 2-3 minutes, and then that was them. I thought that was an interesting choice and a good choice. Labour of Love is such a good expression for it. He dedicates it obviously to his grandfather at the end. And yeah, it just feels so personal. A person that we'll cover in an episode way down the line is Christopher Nolan, and Dunkirk for me is a technical masterpiece, but I felt very little emotional connection to it, whereas this, I think from the first conversation that these guys have when they get woken up and throughout, like, you're rooting for them. the death of Blake is devastating. I feel, and the sequence where Schofield comes out of the river and it just sobs and stuff. I just there's so much emotion in this. I feel, and you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. Like, no hyperbole or anything like that, but the first time I watched this, I was blown away, and it subsequently blows me away every time I watch it. I've watched it 3 times this weekend, just not just in prep for this, but because it's such a good movie. Everything complements each other: the acting, the cinematography, the music, the story. Just it's a culmination of everything. And like you said, and on maybe a letterbox review of one of yours, it's a near enough perfect film that I would probably class it personally as a perfect film. And it's Mendes' best work by far, and that's saying something considering the caliber of the films that we've discussed. Massey, Sam Mendes, have any overall thoughts before we get into maybe the details?
Yeah, I know you've all kind of like absolutely nailed it on the head. Like the fact that Spectre went from what we're saying, feeling disappointed and maybe feeling like half hour sort of thing. This was everything, threw everything into it. Did pull out all the stops for it, and you can tell, and I think that's part of the reason that it's so moving and so interesting, and so well done. It's just it's absolutely phenomenal, and like you're right when you're saying it's Sam Mendes' best work. Like it's just it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I know there was the whole thing about the one shot was kind of like pushed quite a bit in the marketing, I think, or from what I remember, but it's you can tell that there's cuts in it. You can tell there's hidden cuts in it. And in fact, I think I read somewhere like the longest shot is like 8 minutes long. So it's like, it's not actually even as close to being like just one long shot. But that's fine. The way that it's done makes it feel so real. And that's something that always jumps out to me when I watch it. So yeah, it's just completely unbelievable. It's crazy. Like I've watched it 3 times. Now it's just made it into my top 4, but like I know that on subsequent rewatches that it's gonna be like up there in my top 4, like pushing 1, 2, and that's how good it is. It's just it feels like you're there. It feels like you're there watching the whole thing unfold, and to do that with like a cinematic movie is just unbelievable. It truly is. Thinking about cast then. So obviously, as you said, there are these like actors that kind of pop up and do their thing. Personally, I love that as well. I thought the fact that they're popping up in roles of like authority, kind of add to that. The fact that they're like bigger names and stuff, it adds to their authority as well. The fact that they're doing that and just pop up and as you say, having not been sort of marketing the film and stuff like that beforehand, I think is absolutely wonderful. Was there any sort of like, I know we'll talk about the sort of main 2, but was there any sort of big name actors that came in that sort of stood out for yourself? Collie, first of all, was there anything?
I thought Mark Strong's performance was very good and very important, obviously, right in the aftermath of Blake passing away. When he states to Schofield, it doesn't do to dwell on it. I thought that was quite a heavy line to say, and quite a brutal line, I guess, but also a very important line to, you've got this mission, you need to carry on, like, don't dwell on it, at least for now, kind of just knuckle down kind of thing. Yeah, Mark Strong was excellent. I thought, even not the big names, but the guys that he was in the back of the truck with when they're having all the banter and stuff, I thought was quite good. That sequence when they have to push the truck, and he's like screaming when he's trying to help push the truck. I thought that was a great little sequence. There's only one part of that again, it's not like a bad thing, but it's the the real like wise guy kind of the group, when he's like, "Oh, driver, try and not like crash again or whatever." And then he like does a really like he does that to the driver. Or whatever. It really reminded me of like a play or something. It felt very silly or like not hokey in like a negative way. I just thought it was very funny. It's a bit that stands out to me every time. But yeah, Mark's, but then Colin Firth right at the beginning, all the way through to Cumberbatch, and obviously there's the really good line from Mark Strong when he's like, "Some men just love the fight." When he's talking about like when you see Mackenzie, make sure that there's people in the room. That was a very good foreshadowing, I guess, for the end of the film. But yeah, that's my summation on supporting cast. All excellent and all stand on their own. I have a feeling that Todd's going to talk about one, but it's that I'm not going to carry on and talk about. But I'll maybe compliment him if that's who Todd talks about.
Go on, Todd.
Yeah, just really love Andrew Scott.
Yeah, I was away to move on to him. I was like, you know what? Actually, I think Todd might want to talk about him.
No, I have to be honest. Like, I agree with what you said. I think they all play such an important role, and for me, I think it's Andrew Scott's accent that like he has such a broad accent in everything else that he plays. He plays up. Like Moriarty was the first thing I saw him as, and he absolutely hams that up to the nth degree, and it works. This, like, I believe that he was English. Do you know what I mean? I believe that his accent was real. Yeah, he's just. I think for me, what I love about him is that he's never overstated, and I tend to talk about subtle actors a lot, and I think it's because I really rate that. I think if you can portray a character without going over the top, it says a lot about you as an actor, and I think Andrew Scott does that well, especially because with the other, especially with Cumberbatch and Firth, you sat still. Where Andrew Scott doesn't have the time of day and he's moving through. I thought Cumberbatch at the end though was a great sort of little turn, in terms of the type of actor that you want and the caliber. But I agree with the whole like sort of passing the torch type thing. You've got these older actors in levels of authority, in places of authority, to these lads who've not really had massive careers before and are obviously going on to big things. So for them to sort of be so gracious, I suppose would be the phrase. Like, it's a role, take the acting role, but like none of them are going, no, we want more screen time. No, we want more of this. This is what we're doing. It's these two lads' film. You're just part of it. And I love that about it. I don't know if you want to say any more about Andrew Scott, colleague, or Massey, if you want to talk about any of the supporting characters.
I was just gonna say he was excellent. I thought he was standout, and when he's like blessing them and stuff like that, and then he's like, cheerio, like it's just like, see is if that's what you've been told to do, then bye. But chuck back the flare gun if you can, please. Yeah, that was good.
Even the way he talks to like one of the privates, when he's walking past, and I think he's like called Kilgour or something like that, and he's like he's just like bossing about, just like nonchalantly, and yeah, I laughed every time that he was doing that. But yeah, he was absolutely phenomenal. Shall we talk about the two leads then? So Dean Charles Chapman as Blake and George McKay as Schofield. Talk about those guys then, Collie. What was it that stood out for yourself with them?
Is it George McKay or Mackay? Is it McKay?
I don't know. McKay.
Okay. Anyway, George.
Mackay.
I thought his portrayal of Schofield was amazing. Like, to take a film like this on your shoulders and carry it the way he did, quite literally almost. Throughout, I thought it was an amazing performance. I thought he was incredible. Even from the offset, that first conversation they're having, and he like shares his bread, I think it is, with Blake, and that just shows that he's got this kind of overall just loving and caring and big brotherly almost sense of looking after him. And then the subsequent sequence when Blake gets in that little bit of a fight about, the way that they're going up the trench or whatever, and he kind of resolves it all there. Just incredible. One of my favorite ever acting performances, certainly in a war film, I would say. Just goes through all the emotions, from start of just accepting, right, we're going to go and do this, to then, I guess, talking about them both. The death sequence of Blake is like harrowing. It's very, very harrowing, the way that he talks. And it's the bit where he's like, "Oh, we're being shelled," and "Oh no, I've been hit." Like, "Oh, am I dying?" And he just goes, "Yeah, I think you are." He plays a soldier, and I rewatched this on Friday night with a couple of people, and we talked about it a little bit afterwards. It kind of highlights the waste. It was such a waste of life. Not we're going to go on a big diatribe about war in general, or certainly the First World War, but it just feels like such a waste. Blake was trying to help this soldier, and then he gets stabbed and dies. And yeah, like you said, Todd, it was kind of an interesting story choice to do that. But I thought Tommen from Game of Thrones, I thought he did very, very well as Blake. So I was watching it with Percy and Retox, and after, I didn't say this before because I didn't want to take Percy out of it, but I typed in the text chat. I was like, "Oh, do you know who Blake, the actor who played Blake, was?" He was like, "I can picture his face, but I don't know who." And I was like, "Oh, it's Tommen." And he's like, "Oh, no way," because it's just such a grown-up role from a guy who, like, not a lot of years prior to that, had been like this young king at some point in Game of Thrones. So for him to kind of elevate into this kind of role, I thought was excellent. But obviously, subsequently after that, it's all George Mackay as Schofield.
It's Mackay, by the way. I checked.
Okay, that's fine. Regardless, coming back to the scene that I said was probably the standout is when he gets out of the river and he's just sobbing, and then he's just so jaded as he's like sitting listening to that haunting singing in the wood. I thought, like, that long shot of him just sitting there with like his head cocked just out of it, and then the guys gather around and I need to look for the Devons, and then all of a sudden just that initial shit, right, okay, I'm here, I need to do something. And that final sequence, which we will get onto, is up there as one of the best film sequences in my opinion. But yeah, the two leads, I think, really, really excelled in their roles. They didn't have to go as hard as they did, I feel, and it still would have been really good. But they certainly elevate the film, and that says a lot compared to, like, when you're putting them up against all these kind of senior actors in terms of like established actors. I thought they stood on their own.
And also, I suppose as well,
then,
like the way it was filmed as well, like it's not a normal way that obviously films are kind of made, and for them to be able to kind of slot right in and do as they did was great.
it must have been challenging, but they certainly rose to that. So just quickly on that, to play Blake, Tom Holland was initially approached but couldn't due to scheduling conflicts, which I thought was interesting. But I feel like that would have taken me out of it a little bit.
100%.
Having known Tom Holland for quite a while now, I think having somebody with acting chops, obviously having been in Game of Thrones before, but wasn't like a known face, I thought was a good choice. Because even George Mackay wasn't really a household name. You could argue that he still isn't, but he wasn't as established as he is now on the back of this film as he was going into it, which I thought was a really good choice by Mendes to cast two relative unknowns in this. If it had been two big actors throughout, it would have just been it would have lessened it somehow.
And I suppose while making the decision to kill off probably the more well known of the two unknown actors as well, I think it's quite a brave choice as well. You know, having been on a show like Game of Thrones, I'm sure people would have at least kind of recognised his face, sort of thing. And then for him to obviously die, and the other one to stay on was a brave choice. Right, in terms of obviously the cinematography and stuff, it was an incredibly well shot, and won Deacon's obviously best cinematography at the Academy Awards. Talking about sequences and the way things were shot, was there anything again that stood out for yourself? So Todd, was there anything cinematography wise that stood out for you from Mr. Deakins?
Obviously the last scene, but I think we'll get onto that a little bit more. For me, it was the running through the ruined sort of churchyard where it was the light and the dark again. It worked so well that obviously these lads aren't soldiers. One of the best things about the performance is like in every other war film, you've got that soldier in the group who's like your typical sort of wants to take on everything. These are just two young lads, and when he's on his own, he's scared shitless. Do you know what I mean? And running through what is a churchyard? It's the poster on Letterboxd that I think you use, Collie, like with the sort of ruins that make the 1917 that looks.
Yes.
It looks amazing. But yeah, that was incredible. But I think, like you said, there are some obvious cuts within the film. Like you can see it if you sat watching it. But just as just to be immersed in it, from start to finish, it's perfectly shot. Even moving through the trenches, it never focuses on like anybody except the two main characters, but you can see things happening that makes it feel like you're there with them. And obviously that's the point, is it's immersion. This one shot is immersion. You're not, cutting between different places. But yeah, that scene as he's running through, I thought the hand to hand bit not long after that as well, where he's lying in wait for one of the soldiers to kind of come across. He kills he kills the German there, and then he runs across and fights hand to hand. It's quite near the end. Just again, action sequences really well shot. And I go back to the rat scene in the bunker. That was, for me, I was properly taken back by that. That was something that I don't know, I wasn't expecting, and I think for the way it was shot, where in such an enclosed space, was phenomenal. Colin?
There's two shots that even on my initial viewing of it. So I seen this in IMAX the first time that I seen it, and there's two shots that properly like maybe sit up and go, that this is some of the best cinematography, some of the best filming you'll ever get. The first one is, it's not long after they set off on their own into no man's land. You go down into the crater, and then the tracking shot is across the water as they're walking around like the perimeter of the water. That for me is one of my like I remember at the time being like, holy shit, that's stunning. I can't wait to watch that again. That might be one of my favorite ever shots in a film. It's incredible. And then it gets usurped later on in the film. He's knocked out by the sniper, and he wakes up. Obviously, one of the big cuts of the film is that. But there's the shot, and the music complements. We'll get onto the music, but it goes up the stairs, out the window, and comes down and meets him on the street. It blows me away every time. It's perfect. It's going up the stairs, and then the flares start coming in, and it just lights up as you're going out the window. It's one of the best shots I've ever seen in film, and I don't think very much will ever beat it. It's the complement of everything, and the music as well gets me. It's goosebumps every time for me. That shot especially, and yeah, just if we're talking about general cinematography, the final sequence. For a while after, like I remember watching it initially and being blown away by it, and even subsequent watches. For a while, I kind of downplayed the final sequence a little bit because it's the hallmark of the film, it's the trademark of the film, it's what everyone knows. I think because it was used in all the promotional material, was him running along the front of the trench. Like it's one of the biggest marketing parts of the film. Is that, I would say. But every time I watch it, I enjoy it more and more and more. I guess like we'll go to you, Massey, for your favorite shots, and then we can maybe come back to that end sequence and talk about our favorite parts of it. So, what overall cinematography wise, is there anything else that stood out for you?
Not again. It's kind of just the way that the camera sort of like works as being almost like our character, but like it's a character in a way that like it makes us a character kind of thing. Because we feel like we're there, which is like an incredible thing to do. In terms of not necessarily cinematography, but more production design. Anyway, for me, one of the things that I picked up on rewatch was that like, and they do kind of touch on this, but the difference between the British trenches and the German trenches, like I never really picked up on like how different things were. Like the British was kind of more like just like it was proper man-made, and like there was little holes that they were just like sleeping in and stuff. And then when they go to the German one, there's like they mention the fact they built this like bit with all the beds and all that sort of stuff. But even just when they like get to it, there's like little signs. The sandbags are stacked up like uniform. There's like wooden things holding up the trenches and stuff, making it like an actual thing, like stuff like that. Which again I didn't catch on like the first couple of watches. I thought was like so well done. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. The main sort of like cinematography stuff, that shot when it comes out of the through the window is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I think there's even a video of Roger Deakins talking about how they lit up like that whole sequence, the whole like town basically, and like just the technical side of that is crazy. Like how they managed to do that. Because it was like all like big lights. I think they had like set at certain like times and stuff to go off, and it's just wild, just absolutely wild. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The main sort of like the big sequence when running running out of the trench down no man's or down the sort of battlefield is so well done. We can go on to that now and chat about that in a bit in more detail, because I think that is like, as you say, the one that everyone knows. So Colin, I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about it, so feel free to go for it.
Yeah, for me, the best part of it is the music. 1600 Men's the name of the track on the official soundtrack, if you wanted to listen to it. It starts when he stands up after he gets picked up by those guys, when he's soaking wet in the forest. It just so subtly starts at that point and just builds and builds and builds, pushing through all the trenches, getting to every senior figure and being like, where's Colonel Mackenzie? And they're like, he's further down, he's further down, he's further down. Get to the guy who's obviously got shell shock, obviously got PTSD and upset and can't do anything. Then he gets to finally this senior officer. He's like, you're going to have to wait until after the first wave sort of thing. And he's like, I can't. So then when he's lying, that shot like up the trench, when he's lying on his tummy on the kind of diagonal bit of it, and the senior officer's like, I've got to note it down. He's like, you can't possibly make it that way. Are you bloody insane? And then he's just sitting there, and then he looks back at him, and then they make eye contact again. He's like, what are you doing? And then he just gets up, and it's funny, like he doesn't run initially, he walks, and then obviously the whistles go and everyone's up the top, and then he's running, and everyone that's watched this will know, oh well, he wasn't supposed to bump into that people, but they kept it in because it was a quarter of a mile or something like that he had to run every time that they were trying to shoot it. But yeah, just the build up and the kind of big crescendo of the music at that point, all the way until he like jumps down into the trenches again, is stunning. It's iconic. It's one of those shots that I think is going to live. It's timeless. It's timeless. It's always going to be remembered as one of the greatest sequences, I think, in any war film. It's like, I love Saving Private Ryan and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of that's probably remembered as some of the best war film work, but I think this stands shoulder to shoulder, if not slightly above, for me personally. And when it comes to what I think war films, it's this. When you use Todd Massey?
Todd?
Just in terms of the music, I just think it's really well used. I don't think I can really add anything to what Colin said. I just think it's more a case of I read a thing about when does the music. The question that you had to ask was, when does the music go away? And with there being no cuts and no scenes, it's kind of, it has to sort of move and sort of move between each scene perfectly, and I think it does that. It gives it the sort of the right level of tension when it needs it. It gives it, but I think as well the lack of gore sometimes works as well. Like in those moments, works. Ridiculous. But like we say, he's shown himself to be incredible. It's not somebody who I would have known about previously, if I'm honest. It's not somebody who I would have really focused on. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. I don't know if there's anything, Massey, you want to add on?
No. I mean, you touched on there, Colin, about the whole thing about when he isn't meant to hit the person or fall over and stuff, but they kept that in. Like, I think that adds to the realism, and like it's like, again, the foresight for them, or like the proactivity of them, just keep rolling and just keep going with it. obviously it's going to be an expensive scene anyway with all the explosions and stuff. So there's probably that to it as well. But yeah, I think it's just absolutely wonderful. Yeah. So then obviously the next part is we see Benedict Cumberbatch. Of course, we kind of touched on him as part of it. I thought he was one of the ones again that we spoke about that kind of popped up in Authority and stuff. When I first watched it, again, did you guys know that these folk were going to be in the film as these sort of like little cameos and stuff?
I don't think I did.
No.
I definitely
not a
did.
clue.
Yeah.
I don't think it was really like even announced subtly or anything like that. I went into this film having watched the trailers and stuff, but I didn't really have much knowledge about the context of who was going to be in it and at what point.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. I couldn't remember if there was like if that was something that was like kind of.
Sorry, on you go.
No. I was just going to say.
One of the reviews was talking about how he says "hope's a dangerous thing," and somebody was just like, "Oh my, must have been listening to a lot of Lana Del Rey in the build up to the filming of this because I think one of her songs or one of her lyrics is that," and I just thought that was quite funny. Yeah, we can get onto some of the letterbox reviews that are quite interesting. I think in our summary, but I think we've got one more sequence to talk about after this. But Todd, any thoughts on Cumberbatch yourself?
No, I touched on it previously. Just I think it's really good that to use him as the sort of because he is. I know Colin Firth's obviously been in the industry longer, and is probably a better known name. But especially, I mean, even still, Cumberbatch is at the height of it, isn't he? He's at the height of his career. So to have him as the sort of the last touching point before the end of the film was was brilliant, and he has that air about him, that sort of. I really like the guy. He seems like a really sound bloke in terms of like when I've seen him in interviews and that. But he's got that British snobbery about him. Like he can play that so easily.
Like stiff upper lip kind of thing, innit? Like
yeah. But yeah, and like you say about Mark Strong with that sort of what was it? Don't dwell on it. Like how typically British is that? Like, do you know what I mean? It's yeah, and he has that in spades.
Rule Britannia.
Just fair enough. Just on the Cumberbatch thing, more of a Colonel Mackenzie observation is that he's kind of painted as almost the villain, I think. Certainly in the build up to that after Mark Strong's comment of like, "Oh, make sure that there's people there when you tell him," and you're like, "Why is that? Why is that?" And his first is just like, "Nah, they're already over. Like that's it." And then he obviously accepts the instructions and tells everybody stand down, but then he's got that monologue about hope's a dangerous thing. I felt myself, I don't know about you two, but I felt myself sympathizing with him because he's just like, they're just going to tell me to go over the top in 2 days' time anyway. Like, he's first painted as this guy that just loves war for the sake of war, because of Mark Strong's character, but by the end of it, I thought I was very quite sympathetic with him almost, because he's like, when you watch films or you read up stuff about this war, like it's all the lower ranked guys are sent out as cannon fodder. I mean, you know that about the whole film because it's the two main characters are just sent out on this kind of suicide mission almost, and then you kind of see that like he's a senior officer, but he answers to people above him as well, and he'll get sent out at some point probably. So I think it's kind of a bit of a sobering scene as well in terms of everybody answers to everybody and they're just going to tell him to go over the top at some point. Anyway, so he's kind of like, why not just do it now sort of thing because they're on the back foot. But I just thought it kind of was a twist in a way of how the character had been portrayed throughout it. I thought it was quite a cool bit of writing, I thought, to kind of give you sympathy towards this potentially villainous senior officer.
It almost humanized him, didn't it?
It does. It really, really does.
Yeah,
and it's a very human film.
Yep, definitely. Yeah. So the final bits and pieces is the sort of the devastating reunion that Schofield has with Blake's older brother, played by again a sort of little cameo Richard Madden, dropping in and doing his thing. What did you think of that final sequence? Like, Collie, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was great. It breaks me every time, that sequence. There's a couple of scenes that break me throughout it, but that one where he's like, the 8th, oh, you must know my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I came here with him. Oh, Rob, where is he? And then it's like Madden absolutely nails his like 2 minutes on screen. He's so crestfallen when he realizes he's not there. He was sent with him. So like, I think he's excellent. And it comes back to the stiff upper lip kind of, and it's not even like a Britishism for me. It's just they kind of had to be like that during that time. They don't dwell on an attitude, and they kind of just get on with that attitude because it was just a day-to-day occurrence for people to die. Unfortunately, such a waste of life. But if you let that get onto you, then you would never have made it, sort of thing. So when he's just like, "Oh, get yourself some food," and that even after receiving that, yeah, Madden nails it. And then that walk to the tree. And it kind of the full circle moment because he begins the film under a tree. I'll talk about the tree trivia wise after we both. I don't know if you know the note that I'm away to tell you, but you could both give your thoughts on that Madden sequence, and then we can maybe you can maybe tell that bit of trivia when you've spoke on it. So Todd, what did you think of the end sequence, the final act of the film?
Yeah, like it brings it round perfectly, and we've talked loads about films that haven't stuck the landing, and watched plenty more of them where they don't. And like you say, I think you've nailed it. Madden has no time on screen in comparison to a lot of people, but what he does, he does really well. It was devastating. I think I was exhausted by the end of the film. Like, it's one of those films that takes a lot to watch because of what's happening to these lads. I didn't think I could be any more emotionally invested, and then that happens, and it's like another sort of not necessarily a gut punch, but it hit me. It was fantastic. But like I said, I don't think I can add much more on what you said, Massey.
Yeah, no, completely. And I love the fact that that it bookends by him finishing off at the tree. I think that's a great way of like showing that like that was the story. Without coming up with like Finn or something at the end, like a pretentious thing like that. You just know that like that was the story, was from the tree to the tree. And yeah, so the tree, go ahead with the trivia about this one?
Yeah,
So straight from IMDb, an extra said, "I can't help but laugh at the final shot of the tree. About 100 extras used that tree to urinate on as the toilets were so far away. We had no idea the ending would take place with the main actor sitting under it." So he basically just laid in their piss right at the end of the film, which I suppose is an allegory for war, because you find yourself laying in piss.
Yeah. Anyway, just on the Madden Mackay sequence, that was. They didn't do it in one take in terms of they recorded multiple takes, but the take that was used in the film was the first take of that conversation, which I thought was pretty cool, that they nailed that emotional culmination in the film. And yeah, just like the music in that when he sits under that tree and you see he looks at the photo of his family and stuff. It's amazing. It's a perfect film. It's perfect.
Absolutely. All right, I think we can just go into our letterbox reviews then for this one. Collie, why don't you tell us what you give it?
6 out of 5 for me. One of my favorite films ever. A very important film to me. Last ever film I watched with my dad as well. So yeah, just very important.
Todd?
Yeah, 5 stars. Yeah, perfect.
Same. That's it. I'd say it's in my top 4 films now. And like on Letterboxd, obviously it's top 4, but like I have a top 5, and it's in my top 5 as well. So yeah, it's.
Well, obviously, if it's in your top 4, it's in your top 5. What do you mean?
Well, yeah, I was just making sure that that you knew.
It was after watching it 3 times this weekend. I was like, how can that not be in my top 4?
Yeah.
My it's funny on Letterboxd. My top 4 isn't necessarily my top 4, if that makes sense. I've tried to have like different films in my top 4, so like Four Lions is in there. So arguably Four Lions isn't in my top 4 films of all time, but I didn't just want to have like all Nolan films or whatever. I wanted to have it a bit varied. Just on Letterboxd, there's 2 reviews I'd like to talk about. One of them's Sydney from The Bear, Ao Edibiri. I can't how to say her surname. I'll read it though. Okay, literally, I'm into war now. This rocked and left me physically shaking, and I would kiss Roger Deakins wherever he wanted if he asked me to, and I never want to see it again in my life. I thought that was a really good review. And secondly, there's a 1-star review. Definitely given a 1-star review for attention. But the it's one critique of the film that I could agree with to an extent, but you could probably make this argument about everything. But it felt like, and a mate of mine talked about this, and he felt the same. It felt a bit video game-esque in terms of it's this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And this review, I don't agree with the 1-star rating, and there's people commenting on it like wishing death upon this person almost because of the 1-star review. But they list it as achievements, like trophies from Xbox. So they're like achievement unlocked, like receive orders, achievement unlocked, like do this, and then achievements still locked, and it was like get through the German bunker without blowing it up. Like I thought that was quite interesting. I thought it was quite humorous. I don't think they even think that it's a 1-star film, but I think they did that to then for the algorithm for people to click on. I wonder who's rated this 1-star, and it's there. It's got thousands of likes, but I think like even I would have liked it in terms of it's just a very humorous review of it. And I'm not like, as much as I love this film and it's one of my favorite ever, I'm not blind to. I can see where people are coming from, where they felt that it was a bit. This happened and this happened, but I think that's kind of a kind of. I guess a kind of a thing that because of the way that it was filmed in one shot, it kind of had to be like that. I'm trying to think of the word, but not a culmination, but a kind of. It was the fact that it had to be, or it was decided to be in one shot, felt that it needed to be sequence to sequence to sequence. If that makes sense, it's just because of the one shot that happened. But that wasn't a thing that took away from the film for me. But I can understand why people perhaps felt that way.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the final film in Sam Mendes' filmography. We're moving on to Empire of Light, so a drama about the power of human connection during turbulent times set in an English coastal town in the early 1980s. Now, just to kind of give a bit of context, we have actually spoken about this one before in one of our Oscar episodes. It was nominated for cinematography, so we will talk about Mr. Deakins. But first thoughts, Collie, on Empire of Light, or second thoughts, I suppose, if it's rewatching it. So
yeah, so I remember talking about it for the Oscars episode, and without listening back, I feel like I said, "Oh, why was this nominated for cinematography?" Having rewatched it a few times for this, including this weekend for a final rewatch, I've actually we'll get onto Letterboxd obviously then, but I changed my review on Letterboxd. I think this is one of those films that's certainly a grower on me. It's never going to be a top tier film, but the more I watch it, the more I get invested in Olivia Colman's performance as Hillary and Michael Ward's as Stephen. I watched. I tend to do this for quite a lot of films. I try and look up Mark Commode's review on the film, just because he's such a good movie reviewer and has always got quite good thoughts or relating it back to other films and that. And having watched his, it kind of opened my mind up a little bit to maybe accepting this film is a little bit better than I originally thought. I'd probably say, like, since my first watch for the Oscars to my first watch for this to my subsequent watches for this, it gets better every time. Hence the grower analogy there for me. So yeah, a good film. A good film is probably a succinct way of putting it. That's my feelings towards this. Todd?
Yeah, it's the second watch, and it hasn't changed for me. I honestly don't get it. Like I said to you before, as a rewatch for this episode, I almost felt like a bratty sort of child. Like where I was like, why do I have to watch this again? I just can't. I can't connect with it. I think performances wise, there's some really good stuff in there, and there's some ideas. A film about a cinema for me, I should be connecting with because it's something that I connect with. Like it's something that I spend a lot of time.
and you're
at
born in
and
the 80s
whatever.
as well.
and I was born in the 80s. I saw 10 months of the 80s. It was a wild time. I had a great time. But yeah, it was. That's all right. Beige was the word I used in my original letterbox review, and it's one that I'll use again. Not in terms of colours on the screen, in terms of the like the story and how I felt about it. I think the messages within the film and the things that it's trying to say have been said a lot better in other films. Massive.
I am agreeing with Collie. When I first watched it with the Oscars, I was kind of like, yeah, it's fine. Watching it again, I bumped up, like, just for spoiler alert, I bumped up half a star because I got more out of it the second watch. And I'm sure that, like, the more that I watch it, the more I'll get out of it. But yeah, I think the performances are wonderful. There's a lot of imagery and a lot of, like, metaphors that I didn't pick up on the first time, which I kind of did, or I feel like I did, or I might have just been like, I might be absolutely talking waffle, but in my mind it works. That I picked up this time, which enhanced the film for me. But yeah, I thought it was actually it's similar to what you were saying, Colin. Like, I was like, I don't know why it got the cinematography sort of nod, but watched it again, I'm like, actually, you know what? There's some really beautiful stuff in that. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot better than the first time I watched it. So um, yeah, I think it's I understand, like, people's potential frustrations or not connecting with it, sort of thing. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed it more this time round than I did the first time. Okay, so I mean, first of all, we've kind of touched on the performances anyway, but obviously it's sort of anchored by Olivia Colman. Give me your thoughts on sort of her performance, then, Collie, for playing Hillary.
I think she's absolutely brilliant. Even from the offset, her kind of not infatuation, but it was one of the shots I didn't really click with it until the rewatches. Was that when Stephen reaches up and you see his, like, shirt lift up a little bit, and you can see her go, well, like I don't want. I try not to belittle, but she's like, oh, like you can
Ooh.
sense in her face that she's attracted to him even prior to that. But that was kind of I thought, a moment that it kind of elevated that, oh, they're going to be in this, or she's going to try this relationship, and you don't really know where it's going to go. She's obviously an older woman than him. There's the kind of underlying racial things that are going on in this film. So you're like, oh, how's this going to be received if they end up being in a relationship? And that I just think she's absolutely class. There's one, like, standout sequences when she's in her flat and she's going on full, like, warpath mode. She's hysterical. And Olivia Colman, I feel, can just play. It's a weird thing to say. She can play mental illness well, if that makes sense. Like, she can play the kind of bipolar disorder, the neurotic aspect to this character very well. I don't know what it is about her, but I think it's just the caliber of actress that she is. She plays that side of things, then she plays the tenderness with Stephen, and then she plays the kind of the anger. Her scene at the premiere in the kind of the entrance hall of the cinema with Colin Firth, I think, is amazing. Yeah, and then when the wife comes out and stuff, and then fuck or not to fuck is the question. The delivery, that's the question, is the delivery of that, I thought, was like pure venom. I thought it was amazing. I think he definitely carried this film, and rightfully so. She was recognised very highly for it, and she's the standout for me by far.
Yep. Todd, thoughts on Olivia Colman?
Yeah, I love seeing her in everything. Just number one because of how good she is, but number two because of where she's come from. Like, I'm a big Peep Show fan. It's one of those TV shows that's on regular rotation at our house, and to see her come from Sophie to this and The Favourite, like, it's amazing. But she's got there rightfully. Do you know what I mean? She plays broken so well. And broken, sorry, not in a mental illness. Like, I agree with what you're saying, Collie. Like, she plays that perfectly, but as in, you can see that people have hurt her before, and she's scared to kind of go back into not just a romantic relationship, but just people in general. The state, obviously, if she's been she's been sectioned. Like, you can see that she's scared of those things happening again, and you see it within the first within the first meeting of her. I thought like you said, the bit with the shirt lifting, but just the pigeon in general, that whole section, the way that it's obviously a veiled metaphor for how she wants to be treated, and like, you know, somebody coming in and taking care of her just needs a little bit of extra tender care or whatever. But you can see her connecting immediately with the character and with herself and understanding where she's at. She's phenomenal. She's so good, and like you say, she does the loud and when she's kicking off really well. But she also does the quiet and the understated really well as well. You could put her in anything, and she'd be brilliant. And for me, this is where most of the stars come from, is what she does in this film. Massey, I don't know if there's...
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're right. And this is where, talking about the pigeon and stuff there, that was kind of the symbolism I didn't quite catch first time around. Like the upper parts of the cinema that was like kind of run down and stuff, and he had to Stephen had to sort of push her to let her show him up there and stuff. Like I saw that, and again, I might be talking absolute shite, but I saw that as like imagery for her and like her like personal life or her personality, her well-being kind of thing. It took him getting her to allow him to come in, and then obviously the fact it was all run down and stuff was obviously like more like a metaphor for her actual mental state, basically. That's what I saw it as. Anyway, again, could be talking absolute shit, but that seemed to enhanced it for me. But yeah, her performance is wonderful. Like it's just so good. Like even the part where they're skipping stones after he's had a confrontation from that racist old guy eating his chips, and she says like try to teach him how to throw stones, but she doesn't even do it right, and she's like, I'm just saying that I could do it, and like it's just like the tender, like humorous moments there that she plays, that lift his spirits, and you can just like the chemistry between them is just absolutely wonderful for, as you say, like a older woman and a younger kind of guy. She's just she's wonderful. She's absolutely great in this performance here. Michael Ward as Stephen, though, I thought he was again quite understated in what he did, but he was like the perfect kind of person to be alongside Olivia Colman's kind of more sort of maybe out there when she gets a going sort of thing. I thought he was absolutely wonderful. Todd, what do you think about his performance?
Yeah, he was. I thought he played off Olivia Colman very well. I thought he was solid, but it wasn't anything that like wowed me. If that makes, I agree that he was understated, but I like, yeah, he was good. I loved the moment between him and the projectionist. I've forgotten his name, Toby Jones. I love that moment, and there are certain scenes where I do think he does a good job, but I wanted more, like you know, especially where he's confronted by the old bloke with the chips. Like, I don't know, I felt like more could have been done with his character there. Yeah, he was good, he was solid, but again, I don't think it was, and maybe he's been overshadowed by Olivia Colman a little bit for me, but yeah, he was good. Nothing remarkable for me. Collie?
I thought he was really good. I thought he was very complimentary to Olivia Colman when he comes back at the new year and they go up on the roof. Maybe touching on some of the cinematography, but that was gorgeous. I thought that was really well done. And yeah, just his tender moments with Hillary, I thought were excellent. And his interactions with Toby Jones and his interaction with Tom Brooks' character as well, when Tom Brooks is kind of explaining to him what's happened to Hillary in the past, and where she is and where she's coming from, and she'd been sectioned. And he was a very understanding character and very caring, and I think Michael Ward did an excellent job at showing that. Very like just soft spoken at times and delicate with a very delicate person in Hillary. Yeah, I thought understated is certainly true. but I think the character needed him to be. If he was a bit more bigger and bombastic and over the top and stuff, it wouldn't have worked. I think he did exactly what Mendes asked him to do.
Yep, agreed. Um, Obviously, there's our boy who was in the last one, Mr. Colin Firth. He kind of has like a part as Hillary's boss. What do we think about that relationship between the two of them, Hillary and Colin Firth, and his sort of like, I suppose, power trip, wasn't it? Colin, what's your thoughts on that sort of like chemistry?
Oh, I think he played a bastard really well. Like and just like nothing. Like as a watcher, nothing but contempt for the guy that he was sexually abusing Hillary, essentially, taking advantage of his power over her as his boss, and he gets his rightful comeuppance. Very satisfying to hear from Stephen, obviously, when Hillary comes back from her stint being institutionalized again, that he's subsequently moved away. I thought the confrontation again between him and Olivia Colman in the foyer of the theater was excellent. I think he just played the bastard really well. And yeah, Colin Firth's such an adept hand acting wise. He does everything he needs to and more, even with minimal screen time, as we talked about in 1917. And in this, he's not even in it too much, but it's even their first showing of the relationship that he's so forceful and so horrible towards her. The stuff that he's saying, yeah, he does really well. It's hard to be complimentary playing such a bad, horrible person, but Colin Firth does so well in it. Again, similar to Michael Ward, does exactly what Sam Mendes wants him to do and portray very, very well.
Todd, I think you enjoyed certain things that Colin Firth said. Is that correct?
on my Letterboxd review. Yeah, I went back to look at it, and I said also hearing Colin Firth say "suck it" and "your ass feels good in my hands" is not something I was prepared for. I needed a warning. Like, I've never seen him play this kind of role before. I'm sure he's never been a bad guy, and I think it took me out of it a little bit. That I was like, it's the same accent. He might as well have just like dusted off from the trenches, or he's still part of Kingsman, just undercover working in a cinema.
Or the King's Speech.
Or King's Speech. Yeah, he's just the king. And he's just here saying offhanded shit like that. It was weird. Like, I do think it took me out of it a little bit. Not that he did anything wrong. It just it felt very strange. Like you say, he plays it really well. It's horrible. The scenes between them. It's not like even. I know, like, especially the first time you see them together, it's not necessarily like a sex scene. It is assault. It's gross. Makes you feel so uncomfortable. And I think that's where part of where my issue lies with this film is like how much they're trying to take on, how much they're trying to say. And I feel like if you're going to do that, leave something else out. I feel like that should have been a main thread of the film and focus on how she's been treated by him. Or leave it out and focus more on the racism, or focus more on her mental health. And I feel like they were juggling so much that they haven't focused on anything quite enough. If that makes sense. And that comes from Colin Firth and his character. Massive.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think we can kind of move on to the cinematography then. Obviously, what was objectively the best, well, Academy Award thinks so, was the best part of the film. Collie, you said about that fireworks scene. Certainly, that's one that stood out for me. It just looks wonderful in New Year's and the fireworks going off. There was also obviously the towards the end where Hillary actually goes and sees a film for like the first time after having worked in a cinema for so long, never having had the magic moment of sitting down and actually enjoying a film and seeing her with the projector in the background. And I mean, we get a little bit of the film, but the camera mainly focuses on her and her kind of being moved by what she sees. For me was a massive standout. Collie, was there any others, or was there anything else you want to chat about with the
Yeah,
cinematography.
probably when I watched it this weekend, it's maybe the fourth time I've watched the film, and that was the first time I felt like that sequence in the cinema, like her watching the film, really, really like got to me. I finally like clicked with it. It's beautiful. The music and everything, like just a very good, nice culmination of everything. And just, I know we'll move on to the music, but I thought it was quite understated throughout it. It wasn't Thomas Newman for only the second time in a Mendes film. It was Trent Reznor actually did a really good job. But just on the cinematography, all the shots of the dilapidated upstairs of the cinema, I thought was really, really well done. And one standout sequence for me, even from the first time I watched it, was the sequence when Stephen is assaulted. The filming of all the skinheads going past, and you're like, oh god, they're going to be fine. They're just all standing, obviously, in the foyer watching, and then there's the ones that come up to it. I thought that was it. And then when they break in, and the showing of Hillary's kind of just numb at the fact of watching him getting assaulted, tries to stop it, and just the whole filming of that sequence, and then it cuts to one of them like standing on the kiosk where all the snacks are and dancing a little bit, and I just thought that whole sequence was really, really well done. It does, just to kind of piggyback on what you said there, Todd. It's kind of an overall feeling of the film. It does try to spin maybe one too many plates, perhaps thematically. Which is one reason perhaps that we all didn't click with it as much as we have with the other films. I think it touches enough and commentates enough on each of them for it to be worthwhile mentioning, but maybe cut one or two of them out and then allow the other ones to breathe, perhaps is a good way of summarizing all our feelings on it. But just purely on cinematography, after watching it again a few times for this, I do agree that it was worthy of its nomination. I think I might have said even on our episode that, oh, it's just a nod because it's Roger Deakins. But having maybe watched it again, paying a bit more attention to the film as a whole, the cinematography certainly lends itself very well to the film.
Yep. Todd?
Yeah, I agree about them going past on the scooters. I thought that was really well done, and it felt like almost like magical. I don't know why, but the fact that they're all stood there watching this this event, it didn't feel threatening at all. It was like they were all chuffed to be watching it and stuff, and then for it to take such a dark turn, it was really well shot. I just like the shots of like the seaside town that they're in when they're like, I think that's really well done. That when they're walking around together, there's a shot where they sat together on like a sort of on like a booth. I think it's in the cinema where like one of the windows is orange and one of the windows is blue. And you've got that view of the seaside in the background. I thought that was really, really well done. Like I say, it's a really well shot film. There's no question about it. And Deakins can do, the straightforward as well as the big, which is wonderful to see. Yeah. But for me, obviously, like we say, the fireworks, but them going past on the little Vespers was a highlight.
Good stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Was there anything else you want to talk about with that film then? I think we kind of covered most of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm happy with what we discussed.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, let's go into the Letterboxd scores. So, Collie, what did you give Empire of Light on Letterboxd?
Initially a 3. After the rewatch this weekend, it's up to a 3.5 for me. Kind of similar to when we were talking about like Revolutionary Road, and I think there's like a star for each of maybe Stephen and Olivia Colman's, Michael Ward and Olivia Colman's performances. Maybe half a star for Colin Firth on the support, and then maybe a full star, for the cinematography and the music. Like I say, Trent Reznor, he's done quite a lot of film scores in the last maybe 10, 15 years that I've enjoyed. Kind of understated, I thought, in this one, but very complimentary, I think, to the whole kind of thing. So yeah, a 3.5 in eventuality for me.
Yeah, I was the same as yourself. Like I gave it a 3 when we first watched it, and then a 3.5 after watching it. Just like I said, I just think there was like bits that I enjoyed more this time round. So bumped up a little bit to 3.5. Todd, what did you give Empire Light?
2 stars. like
Two.
yeah. I feel like it's different to other 2-star films in that there's some, like some of the Razzie stuff where I've looked and gone, that was dog shit. Like that was 2 stars, you know, for specific things. Where this is more of like a sort of, I just didn't enjoy it. I got nothing from it where I was like, I'd love to see that again. I'll look at some pictures of it. Sure, send me some stills, great. But I'm not watching this fucking film again. Even if we do, even if it ends up doing like Olivia Colman retrospective, I'll literally just be like, no,
Fair
on
enough.
to the next one.
Fair.
Just putting it down now. Go on, Master. What did you give it?
I said you weren't listening to me, but it's fine.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. No, it's fine. Don't worry. So that's just kind of covered the Sam Mendes.
So just to interject, Todd gave that the same amount of stars as he did The Exorcist Believer. So yeah.
Yeah, I love the Avengers moment in Avengers Believer. That Avengers Believer,
Avengers
Exorcist Believer.
Believer.
I'm gonna bump that up to 2.5.
Sorry, Massey, you were summarising there.
Yeah, I was just going to summarise it. That's us went through over 2 parts, all the Sam Mendes films. Now, do you want to kind of just summarise like what the sort of rankings were for the films? Colin, do you want to quickly go through your 1 to 9? Isn't it? Oh, yeah, 9.
Yeah, I mean, like S tier for me is Skyfall and obviously 1917. Secondary is kind of quickly. Just let me pull up the list. Secondary is kind of American Beauty, Road to Perdition, Jarhead. After that's Revolutionary Road, and Away We Go. Spectre and Empire Light are probably side by side. If I was to put one last, it would probably be Spectre. Mainly because of how much it should have been and it wasn't. It was more let down. It was more of a letdown for me. So yeah, that's kind of the summary. There's different tiers of it, obviously, but that's how I would go with it.
Fair enough. Todd?
1917 with and Jarhead are really difficult for me for different reasons to split. I would have them at the top of the list, and I think more Jarhead because I know it so well. I've been watching it on rotation for the last I don't know how many years now, but so they will be difficult to split. Then Skyfall, Road to Perdition, American Beauty, Spectre, Revolutionary Road, Away We Go, Empire of Light.
Fair enough. Mine is just looking at like my ratings and stuff. 1917 is clear. Then I've got Road to Perdition, then American Beauty, Away We Go. Jarhead and Skyfall are probably very similar. And then we have Empire of Light, Spectre, and then Revolutionary Road sitting last. So yeah. Well, that was our Sam Mendes episode. I thoroughly enjoyed going through those. As I say, a lot of them are kind of like sort of kind of first watches, or I'd seen like ages ago, so it was nice to kind of revisit them. Our next one, who's our next episode going to be? We have obviously discussed this. Our next episode for the Lights Camera Discussion podcast is going to be on Alex Garland. Obviously just had Civil War released, so it'll be very interesting to go through his 4 films, isn't it? This
We're gonna do 5.
5 films. Yes, yeah, we're gonna do 5. Sorry, yeah, because we said about
yeah,
we'll say about Dread as well, isn't it? So, because he apparently pretty much directed that. So, yeah, that'll be a very interesting one to go through. Kind of different, a little bit different from Sam Mendes. But yes, if you are watching on YouTube, of course, remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Of course, if you're listening on Spotify, click follow. And of course, let us know what your thoughts are on Sam Mendes. You know, do you like his films? Were we a bit off base with any of them? Please let us know on Twitter at LCD_pod. But guys, thank you so much for talking through these 2 episodes myself. And we will see everyone on the next one. Goodbye.
Cheers, everyone.
in a bit.